The Board of Education of the Wichita Public Schools is now in order for the October 3rd, 2022 meeting. We welcome everyone in attendance and those viewing. The Wichita Public Schools will be the district of choice in our region where all students and staff are empowered to dream, believe, and achieve. If you would join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. Tonight, our Pledge of Allegiance is led by the Southeast High School JROTC, Nancy Hippolito, Christian Rodriguez, Maya Rubio, and David Wade. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? You may post the colors.
Thank you, sir. Order, arms. Center, face. Forward, march. Color guard, roll. Post. Colors. Present, arms. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Order, arms. Powder, face. Forward, march.
A round of applause for the Southeast JROTC. Patrick, first item, please.
First item, under reports, good news.
Good evening, President Reeser, Superintendent Thompson, members of the board. I'm Wendy Johnson with Strategic Communications. We are here tonight to honor a group of rock stars. This team of financial professionals have received the Government Finance Officers Association of America Certificate Achievement, and they've received the Association of School Business Officials Certificate of Excellence. But the really super cool thing is, it's not just once, it's not just twice, this is the 30th year in a row. 30th year in a row that our team of financial professionals have received these two national recognitions for the care that they take in stewarding taxpayer funds and being transparent in their reporting and their advising of all of the rest of us to assure that funds are used in accordance with the law and to support our students in the best possible ways. So without further ado, I'm pleased to invite Susan Willis, our Chief Financial Officer, forward, and I think you will get a chance to meet some folks that would probably just as soon be behind the camera rather than in front of it. That's what makes it fun.
Yes.
Good evening, President Reeser, Superintendent Thompson, Vice President Hedrick, and members of the board. I'm sticking very close to script today because my staff know I can get rather emotional when I talk about them. So I'm going to read and be professional. Thank you for this opportunity to present a financial services good news item. I would like to ask the staff present from Accounting, Budget, and Title Services to join me, whether they like it or not, down front. While they're joining, financial services staff, as Wendy said, normally just go quietly about their business, But when we received notification of the achievement of excellence in financial reporting from both the Government Finance Officers Association and the Association of School Business Officials for the 30th consecutive year, we felt that was a milestone worth celebrating. The annual comprehensive financial report contains a set of financial statements that conform with accounting principles set by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board. The report's primary function is to provide accurate and complete information concerning the district's financial management, giving insight into the financial health of the district, and providing information in a format that is consistent with similar entities. The format and accuracy of the financial information has to be audited by an independent accounting firm so report users have confidence in the data. This is particularly important to investors who currently hold our bonds or who might look at us at some point for future investment. We are very proud to receive the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting from both premier organizations, and we're proud of our 30-year history of receiving this recognition. First, we want to thank our independent auditing firm, Allen, Gibbs & Hulick. We were looking back at records, and we believe AGH, no one can really go that far back in their electronic records, but we believe AGH has been our accounting firm for all 30 years. Their local expertise is well known as far as governmental auditing. Tara Laughlin, Vice President in the Assurance Department at AGH, has directly worked with us for 11 years, and I'd like to present her with a certificate of appreciation for AGH's partnership with us in this 30-year journey and invite her to address the accomplishment with the board.
I'll just say a quick word. I do want to thank Susan and all the folks you see here, as well as other individuals throughout the department that assist us during the audit process. We are currently in the middle of fiscal year 22's audit, and so they all have a lot of additional work on top of their day-to-day responsibilities. And as always, everybody's responding professionally to us. I do appreciate the board's participation in this process. You do have 2 members that are part of the audit committee, which we meet with annually to go over the results of the financial statement and single audit grant compliance audit. And again, I just thank the board for allowing us to have this strong professional relationship with the district over the years. Thanks.
Additionally, several departments provide documentation support during the audit, including transportation, nutrition services, supply, purchasing, environmental services, employee benefits, and facilities. We thank them and acknowledge their contributions to this achievement. The teams that do most of the heavy lifting year after year on this report are here tonight to share this achievement, and I'll present them also a certificate of appreciation for their efforts. And we'll start with the budget department. And I'll ask Elizabeth Eck to join. Katrina Kostner. Ali Eldani. Chris Hurd, who's not here tonight. Kelsey King, soon-to-be Smith, this weekend. Charlotte Rafferty. April Webb, and April is working on, I believe, her 17th audit this year. And their fearless leader, Addie Lowell. And now we'll ask the Title Services Manager, Denise Lawson, to come forward. She primarily works on the single audit, which is mostly the federal funds. And now the accounting staff. Elizabeth Sanborn could not be here this evening, but Elizabeth would be working at least on her 20th year audit, if not a few extra for her time in purchasing. So yes, Elizabeth is a long-term employee, and we miss her tonight, but we thank her for her efforts. And then finally, the architect who carries the big weight of bringing the entire work product together and ensures the financial report accuracy, our controller, Nani Anyancha. And finally, thanks to the Board of Education for its ongoing support of financial transparency and excellence in financial reporting. Thank you.
Julie?
Yeah, I just want to add kudos to this team. In my former life, I got to be a part of audits and worked years with April Webb, to call April out. She was like a daughter to me. So great team here, great work you all do, and behind the scenes, but so important. So thank you all, and Susan, thank you for your excellent leadership and all of the great work that you do working directly with the board.
Thank you, Susan. I tell you, you're absolutely correct. This is an outstanding group of people that we count on every day, and we truly appreciate your service. Patrick, next item, please.
Next item, under reports, Service Employees International.
Welcome, Esau.
Good evening, President Reeser, Dr. Thompson, board members. I have to tend to agree. The accounting department does a great job. Susan has always done a terrific job of getting everything through, and I do appreciate her bringing her rock stars tonight. And tonight I've asked some of my rock stars to show up. You might see some of the security officers and other SEIU members up in the top. And I know that you guys often say, tell your people thank you, and so some of them are here, and you may have an opportunity to do that in a moment. So. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to get with you guys last Friday so that we could get a little more of a handle of what's going on at Southeast and where some of the overcrowding and stuff is. We appreciate that you've got a plan that you're probably going to present later to show everybody exactly what you plan to do there, and so we appreciate that very much. But one of the things that is really concerning at this point to all of my staff that I represent is behaviors, and we really hope that the district will raise their expectations and actually raise the bar on what student behavior is, because it is at a point right now that I don't know if it's COVID's fault or bad advice from people, but it's just not going very well. I have seen some videos of things, fights and things that have been going on in the schools, and I know everybody does the best they can do to control that, but it's getting out of hand. The students I've seen have attacked officers. There should be a zero tolerance policy for that, and I appreciate Dr. Thompson coming out with her statement in the the voice message I got. And as a parent, I appreciate that, because a lot of the kids that are suffering are the kids that are trying to go to school and do a good job. And I know everybody's got their trauma, but as a kid who was in trouble his whole life in school and probably wasn't expected to graduate high school, you guys are going to have to do something, and do something big. So we support you doing that, because our staff members are tired of being afraid of the workplace, afraid of the assaults that happen. And if these kids think that they're grown enough to act that way, then there's some other way that they need to be educated, because they are making our schools a scary place. And I would also make mention to the students who are bringing drugs to school all the time. I want to say, as somebody who has worked for several years on changing the marijuana laws in this state, you are doing a huge disservice to yourself and others when you bring drugs into our schools. These are places of learning. They are not places to peddle your goods, and you don't need to be smoking weed in the bathrooms at school, even if it's in a vape pen and you think people can't smell it, because you are hurting the movement, you are hurting the changes in society with your poor decisions and your bad behavior. So, board, thank you for giving me the opportunity. I hope I haven't ruffled too many feathers with what I have to say, but our security officers need support, not only financially. When Susan's working up this budget, I hope that everybody who sees this will call their legislators, and they will tell their legislators that we need to better fund our security officers, our special ed teachers, special ed programs. I understand how our school district is set up to be funded by the year before, but we need money now because we need bodies to put in place, and nobody's going to come to work for $15 an hour. You can start out as a shift manager at Brahms for that and not deal with any of this. So didn't mean to put in a plug for Brahms specifically, but I did see that the other morning at breakfast, and it made me think about how underpaid and underappreciated all these employees are by our society. And one of the non-financial things that our community can do is handle your people. Send your kids to school and make them act right. And if they don't, reach out for some help, because the school and the system in general is willing to help, but things are getting out of control. And if you want parental rights and you want to have all the say in what happens at the school, why don't you start dealing with it at home? Thank you.
Thank you, Esau. Kathy?
Esau. I would like to echo that. Esau, we agree. I think everyone in administration, everyone on this board, and everyone in 259 agrees with everything that you said. And I think that you're going to be hopefully pleasantly surprised when you see the implementation of what the board plans to do.
Thank you. Superintendent Dr. Thompson.
Katie,
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Were
One
you
second.
sorry.
Yes, Julie.
Did you have someone else?
Yeah, I just want to also echo a thank you to our security personnel. Great work that you do. We appreciate you very much, and I just want to acknowledge you and thank you for the work that you do.
Patrick, next item, please.
Next item, report, United Teachers of Wichita.
Welcome, Katie.
Sorry, I got ahead of myself there
You're
a little.
fine. We're glad that you're anxious to talk to us.
Yes. Superintendent Dr. Thompson, President Stan Reeser, and Vice President Julie Hedrick, and the BOE members, thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak tonight. I wanted to start, Mr. Green is passing out a report, and on the back of it, there's some information from parents about our wonderful pre-K program in Wichita Public Schools. And actually, one of them's from me several years ago, but as a parent of a child, thank you, who participate in our pre-K program, I know how important it is to give our children a love of learning at a very young age. And so what I'm handing you right here is a report. And if you look on the front, it says the Pre-K Task Force Workload and Compensation Recommendation Report. And this came out of negotiations several years ago. Half of the team is from the district, and half of the team is from United Teachers of Wichita. If you notice, it says February 2020. And so COVID hit right after this report was given, and it kind of just got put on the back burner. So I did want to bring this up with everyone and make sure that you had an opportunity to see it and read it. There's some great suggestions that were made by the district and our teachers in this work group that are supportive of our teachers and our students and our parents. So if you have time, I would love it if you could read this. The next thing that I wanted to discuss tonight during my report was the swatting incident at North High School. It was extremely scary, I know, for our students and our staff and our admin and just everyone that was involved. But I'm so proud of our staff for keeping the kids calm and collected, making sure that they got into classrooms when they saw something was going on. Also, we were just so blessed to be able to spend some time with the staff when they did their restorative circle. Amanda Kingery up there, and then Brandon Johnson, I believe. We got to participate in that, and it was wonderful. We were there for about 2 hours with the staff, and it really gave the staff an opportunity to be heard. And some of the things I know the teachers, they just jump into action, and I'm just so proud of them. And they said when the students had left before conferences started, they sat there and the reality kind of hit them, is that if this was real, would I be going home to my family tonight? And so a lot of them said, but you know what? We wiped off our tears and we went to conferences and we let those parents know that their kids are safe with us at school. And so I was just so appreciative that we were able to be there and talk with those teachers. And I was really impressed with the whole process. Brandon and Amanda did an awesome job. Our staff really felt heard. At the end, they asked how they felt, and almost every teacher said they felt hopeful moving forward. So it was just neat, after going through the restorative practices training, just to experience it and see the difference it made just being heard. So I really appreciated that. And the last thing that I wanted to visit with, and also when we talked about safety with our building reps, that is something that's really important to our teachers. And so Terry did offer to come out to our building rep meeting in October and just answer any safety questions and make sure that our staff knows the plan moving forward. And so we appreciate that as well so much. The last thing I want to visit with you about is Southeast High School. I know I just kind of want to echo a little bit what Esau said about making sure that our staff is safe. I know with all the extra kids and overcrowding, my first thought was, how wonderful is it that we have so many kids that want to be at Southeast High School? I mean, we have great teachers, we have great programs. That's, amazing. But we have too many, too many kids in one spot. And so our teachers are asking for some relief. And that overcrowding, I know during the tornado, there's just so many kids to move during the tornado drill, and making sure that there's enough room for all of them in the shelter. So I just wanted to bring that to you. I am asking two things of you tonight. I'm going to ask that you take time to read the feedback from the staff and do what you can to provide some relief and support to our teachers and staff when it comes to those safety concerns. And the second thing is, please continue to participate in that dialogue with UTW and our staff to make sure that as you implement things to help support during this time, that it's working and that things are going in the right direction. Thank you for your time. That's all I have.
Thank you, Katie. Patrick, next item, please.
Next item, public communications.
Patrick, do I have a most recent updated list of the 5 speakers?
That is correct.
Okay. Our first speaker is Joanna Farmer. And I just want to remind the public speakers that you have 3 minutes, and you have the timer up in the corner of the screen, and we welcome you to the Board of Education. Welcome, Joanna.
Thank you. Good evening, board members and Superintendent Thompson. My name is Joanna Farmer, and I'm the agriculture teacher at Southeast High School. You may recognize me as I've hosted many of you on tours through our program and met several of you at the Distinguished Classroom Teacher presentation. First of all, I want to say I love my job. I have some of the best students, work with an amazing staff, and have one of the most supportive and caring administrative teams I've ever had the pleasure of working with in my 20 years of teaching. With all of that being said, we have some issues that need to be addressed. Let me give you some stats that my colleagues and I experience at Southeast that will help you understand the conditions at our school. Currently, I have 260 students, whereas my counterparts in other buildings may only have 125 to 160. My classes usually have right around 35 kids. Grading takes hours on evenings and weekends, and I never catch up. I have 8 preps that have to be planned and prepared for each day. The sheer number of IEPs, 504s, and ELL students is overwhelming. This binder right here is just my IEPs. Hopefully I get to finish reading them. I am one of several teachers that have agreed to give up my planning period to teach an overage class to help our overcrowding issues. Other teachers are giving up their valuable time to fill in as subs or paras because we're so understaffed in every area. I worked 285 hours during the month of September, either in my building or at a required events with students. That does not include those hours worked at home. My job isn't easy, and I definitely don't go to work every day for the money and fame. I love my kids, and I do what I do because I love them. But I'm tired, and it takes everything I have to get up and repeat those 14-hour days again and again. Along with the stress mentioned before, the overcrowding issues at Southeast have caused behavioral issues amongst the students, academic challenges in the classroom, and will eventually lead to teacher burnout in a time of a national teacher shortage. I'm very thankful to the secondary office and the group led by Ms. Kengray for seeing our needs in our building and working on solutions to address these issues. My concern is that the proposed plan will not address the large reduction we need to see in our student population. I ask that instead of moving forward on small changes that simply provide a Band-Aid for the problem, that the board take the time to make some tough decisions and to redraw high school boundaries by next school year. The explosive population growth near Southeast is not going to stop anytime soon, and we need to think about the future. As a district, we need to provide fair and equitable student placement that will be beneficial to all stakeholders. There's a lot of staff members that would love to sit down with you and discuss ideas and options, me being one of them. We don't expect an immediate solution, but we would love to work as a team to come up with a plan that is best for all of our district kids. Thank you for allowing me to work with students who truly are the best of the best, and for allowing me to speak to you this evening.
Thank you, Joanna. Our next speaker is Andrew Lay. Welcome, Andrew.
Oh, hello. Thank you, board members and President Reeser, for allowing me to speak tonight. My name is Andrew Lee, and I'm a senior and student body president of Southeast High. I come before you tonight as a student to address something that not only affects me, but the student body at Southeast. As a representative, I wanted to take a deeper dive into how my peers feel about safety in our own school. We don't feel safe. Allow me to take you on a journey of a typical day at Southeast as a student. First, boarding overcrowded buses where some don't even get a seat and have to result in sitting on the floor. Entering crowded hallways where students are packed like sardines, and how one wrong move, one step on a shoe, could lead to a commotion and even a fight. Then we enter classrooms, like Ms. Farmer said, with teachers managing 35 kids, which is significantly higher than we've seen before. And with that, we see increased classroom disruptions, setting back lesson plans, stressed teachers, stressed students, and stressed administrators. And let's not forget understaffed classes, and the daily desperation of trying to fill those classes with teachers on a sheet like they're signing up for a carnival. This is just the day-to-day. But us students worry about, could the escalation of these fights lead to weapons being drawn? Will I get caught up in the middle of a pepper spraying incident when I'm in the middle of a fight? These are genuine concerns that I have heard during my personal interviews, and that every student deserves the right to feel and be safe at school. Teachers and staff deserve the right to feel and be safe at work. Now is the time to act. These problems aren't new or unexpected. The worries that you see forthcoming are not going to come later. They're already here. See, we're constantly putting Band-Aids on a problem and hoping it will subside. A perfect analogy for this is a hose with a hole. We keep covering holes in hopes that new ones won't spring up, yet they do. Students, staff, and admin are tired of the constant blame game of hot potato, where we keep throwing it from one person to the next. So take a step back and realize that in the end, the behavioral issues that I know the district hates seeing being put in the spotlight is multifaceted, and that to find solutions, we must consider the role that the district, school, parent, and student plays. That every case is unique, and we must consider the effects that it has, not only with the students involved, but those around them. For instance, the last fighting incident, pepper spray was deployed to disperse students that were filming and refused to move, while students minding their own business 1 minute or throwing up and gasping for air the next. And at the end of the day, we must realize and accept the fact that if we continue to mismanage and skim the surface of these issues, teachers will leave. We will have weaker schools, something I know all of you, as representative of our public schools, don't want. There is no one easy fix. I'm not asking you to come up with a solution tonight. I'm asking you to consider listening to what students have to say as well. And to all the parents and those writing a lengthy post on Facebook, no matter the decision, please don't let these incidents overshadow the great things that our students are accomplishing district-wide and within our schools. And while I admit that our public schools are not perfect, we cannot disregard that when we work together, when you invest in public schools and your child's education, success is attainable. Because when you value public education, we value public education. And public schools alone can't raise your kids, folks. You gotta be there every step of the way. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Our next speaker is Chrissy Klein. Welcome, Chrissy.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me some time to speak about my concerns happening in our schools, safety and behaviors. My name is Chrissy Klein. I have been a Wichita Public Schools parent for 18 years. I have a graduate from the class of 2017, and I currently have 2 students attending high school at East High and middle school at Allison. Although I talk to my kids all the time about what's going on in school, the call that we received from Dr. Thompson on September 2nd prompted a great deal of discussion. And after listening to my 12-year-old daughter state, even though she says behaviors is one of the most important things to take care of, it really isn't being taken care of. My daughter tells me about disrespect to teachers, bully-type behaviors being on a daily occurrence, and it has become a normal thing for her to witness. Last school year, she was reporting problems to me, and I reached out to her teachers. And without it being said, I was very much made to feel that if I contacted the administrator, the teachers felt like they would face retaliation. And being concerned that good teachers would have to be stressed out over that, I continued to just tell my daughter to do her very best to ignore the disruptions, just as I did when she was in elementary school. And I am tired of telling my daughter to ignore disruptions. My son, who is a senior at East High, after listening to the message said, "I know that they want zero tolerance, but that's not how it is. It's happening at every high school, and nothing is changing. They care, of course, but something should have been done a long time ago. There is a small percentage of students who are ruining it for everyone else." He said, "I think it's funny that she said it won't be tolerated because nothing's been done to stop it at this point." In a follow-up conversation with him this weekend, he said, "Well, in the last month, it hasn't gotten worse, but it certainly hasn't gotten any better." And because of social media, unfortunately, my son knows a lot of what's going on at the other high schools. A friend of mine said to me that her son came home and told her that a teacher was punched in the face. She said that her son claimed that there was a student at school with a knife. Another acquaintance of mine, I just happened to say to her, "How's your school year going?" She's a staff member at East High, and she said, Southeast High, and she said, she stays out of the hallways as much as possible because it's not safe. The students and building staff are enduring emotional trauma and some cases physical trauma daily. What actions are you taking to ensure the physical and emotional safety of our students, our teachers, and other staff members? Have you gone to our schools on an unannounced visit to attend classes where students are causing the most disruptions? Have you walked the hallways of our middle and high schools without an administrator to get a true experience of what it might be like?
Chrissy, could you sum it up?
Yes.
You're over 3.
I have about 2 sentences left.
Go ahead. 2 sentences, fine.
I feel like maybe if you lived it with our students, teachers, and staff members, then something may have been done already. My children, as well as all children, have the right to be in school and not be traumatized by the extreme bad behaviors of other children.
Thank you, Chrissy. Our next speaker is Michael Harris. Welcome, Michael.
Good evening. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Thompson, and thank you, members of the board, for putting up with me throughout the day-to-day and all the communications that have gone back and forth through the district leadership team. Thank you to the district leadership team for all the work that you've put into creating solutions and working to create solutions to this problem, and specifically to the secondary staff for all the work that they've done. I'm a proud Southeast High School graduate from the class of 1999. I'm a Buffalo through and through. This is my 9th year in education and my 6th year in the Wichita Public Schools. I came to Southeast last year because I wanted the opportunity to go back to my alma mater and work with the students that I knew needed the most support in this district. I have the honor of working with some of the most wonderful kids every year as a director of speech and debate. I have more than 100+ students, and I've had the honor of teaching kids and coaching kids to numerous academic All-American awards, state championships, national honors, and successes through the district. I'm proud that once I got to Southeast, I was able to work with some of the most dedicated staff that I've ever had the opportunity in education to work with. And I'm blessed to have the opportunity to work with educators from across the nation and world, as I've had as I run a nonprofit foundation that does professional development and curriculum development for teachers both in secondary schools and in colleges. The staff at Southeast is a tremendous testament to the wonderful support 259 has provided, and they're the most loyal people who work in the most adverse conditions. Last year, I was surprisingly elected building chair, chair of our building committee and lead pro rep. I was asked to run for that position. It wasn't something that I had planned on doing, and when I won the majority of the vote, I was honored to represent the faculty. I take my role seriously, and I've done my best to try to collect as much information about what's going on at Southeast High School as I possibly can. Building classroom safety due to overcrowding at Southeast is a problem that will continue to harm students and faculty at Southeast until we do something about it. I see firsthand the violence in our hallways and classroom and have to witness daily as both students and teachers face this violence. I have to speak with the teachers who are assaulted in their classrooms, in the hallways, and are subject to the violence from the students who are out of control. And unfortunately, these teachers and faculty do not feel like the board and the district leadership team has heard their voice in the conversations. My building is struggling to stay together. We worked for 2 months to build unity and be united as we work together. 16 of our dedicated staff members gave up their planning time and their duty periods to work, and were given the gift of 35 students in their overage classes. Many of these students, from the data that we've been able to compile, have not passed classes in multiple semesters, are not on track to graduate, and are the source of the constant disruptions in our school. Our data indicates that about 8% of the students in our school are responsible for about 90% of the problems in our classrooms. I encourage you all to come and create a process which collects information from all key stakeholders and considers the needs of all students in schools across the district. I turn to you because our teachers feel like their voices are not being heard. We are going to lose teachers. They are not going to make it through this year. Every day I'm confronted with teachers that are ready to give up and don't know how they're going to come back the next day. Every day I'm left telling those teachers it'll be okay because they're so strong and that we'll work together. Please listen carefully to the concerns brought to you in the communications that I provided you already. A couple of key issues that I think it's necessary to remember, and I will be quick, Mr. President Reeser. One, when we look at the size of Southeast, we must consider that there are 200+ faculty members in that building. Any functional building capacity must take that into consideration. We've looked at architectural plans and diagrams.
Michael, I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up.
Absolutely. Okay. Teacher and student safety is key. Our crisis plans will not work if we have too many students. Our classrooms will not be safe if we have too many students. And our teachers will leave this district if we do not do something to fix this problem. I agree with Andrew. I hope the community focus on the tremendous successes of the students at Southeast and across the entire district who shine in the face of adversity every day. It's a testament to the work that all of you do, from Dr. Thompson to the board, and to all the leaders across this district, and especially the teachers at the schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. And our last speaker is Alan Parker. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you. Good evening, board members. My name is Alan Parker. I am a freshman representative of Southeast High School. I enjoy school just as much as a teacher, maybe more, but it's hard for me to see past the fact that I can't walk through my cafeteria of my school without the large possibility that there could be a fight and I could be indirectly pepper sprayed because of it. First day of school, there is a fight on the south side of Southeast High School, and nearly every other day there is one or more fights. Now the officers of the school can use pepper spray to control the situation. What did school teach us when we were younger? That violence isn't the answer, but prevention should be taken in place in the form of possibly harsher punishments. If a student wants to fight, steal, or threaten people with a harmful weapon, they should have a harsher punishment than a week of suspension. And I understand that you don't want to leave a student behind because of those punishments, but what are you going to do when you realize that keeping those harmful students in school can lead to other students not being able to learn or feel safe in the Wichita Public School District? A student at the end of the month of August, we'll call John Doe, was trying to get out of a harmful situation. We are taught in school at a young age to do so, right? He was then beaten by a group of 4 upperclassmen. He suffered from bleeding in the brain, and 4 students only got 5 days of suspension. They most likely didn't even want to be in school. You're giving them a reason to get out of class and stay home. They should have been expelled from all Wichita public schools. Don't you agree? Quote, "These kids are out of control. It does not fall all on Southeast. It falls on the parents too. These parents need to get control of their kids. These parents send their kids to school and expect the school to take full responsibility for what's happening. But the problem is starting at home. It's not the school's responsibility for these kids. It's that the parents need to get control of their kids. Some of these parents, they condone it." End quote. By John Doe's mother. A 16-year-old was arrested for having a gun at West High School. 7 to 8 students were involved in a brawl on Wednesday in the cafeteria of Southeast. 2 brawls outside of West High School. Another 16-year-old found with a gun was arrested at East High School. Another incident, much like the last, a student was found with a gun at Heights High School. Lastly, 2 more incidences with guns in the Wichita Public School District I couldn't find anything on. Today I found out one of those were here. And finally, a magazine to a semi-automatic rifle was found in Southeast High School on a student, I believe. This is out of control. I am disappointed that I must be here in front of you and say something needs to change for all students and staff to feel safe at Southeast High School or anywhere in the Wichita Public School District. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Alan. Patrick, next item, please.
Next item, under education, Southeast High School enrollment update.
I'll let the superintendent introduce the topic while the leader of the presentation are coming down.
All right. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to all of the Southeast staff who are here, as well as the students who also have the opportunity to speak. Thank you for coming and providing information. We are also here and I'm glad you're going to stay. I hope you all stay, because we do have a presentation that we will deliver around our work at Southeast. We have begun gathering feedback from faculty, and we will continue to do that along this journey, and we'll talk further about that. I also want them to know that once we have the feedback, we will come back out to the staff, and we will be giving you the information that we've received for that feedback. Then we will be taking more information from you as we move along. So we will be there on a regular basis, not only to your school, but any other school that's going to be impacted by these moves. We are not going to talk about a lot of behavior that is happening in the schools, but I do want to acknowledge that we are listening, we are collecting data, and we are looking at our board policies. We have committees looking at those to be able to tighten some of those up. I hear some of you saying how many days people got suspended. Those are not accurate information. I want to make that clear. Those students have been expelled from school, and they will not be coming back to the Wichita Public Schools. So do not share information that's incorrect. I want to be clear. I will also say we have had a lot of expulsions and extended suspensions in the last couple of months of school, so that all that information is inaccurate. We are doing things, and we are taking the appropriate things to tighten things up in the school district so that we can ensure that all of our staff and our students are safe in them. And I will continue to do so until we have an orderly environment for our students. It is going to take time, and it is going to take action, and we are going to do that. So I want to make sure that people don't leave here saying things that are not true, because that's not accurate information that we're out sharing. The other thing that I want to do is to acknowledge my colleagues here from the secondary office that are here to present to you some of the first steps that we're going to be doing with Southeast. Know that this is many moving parts to this, and it is multifaceted and multi-year movement. So we'll start out tonight with our presentation that we will discuss some of the short-term and kind of maybe year 1, 2 kind of short term, and then we'll be moving forward with other long-term solutions with the input of Southeast and their faculty and their staff.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. Good evening, President Reeser, Vice President Hedrick, members of the board, Dr. Thompson. My name is Fabian Armendariz, and I am the Division Director of Operations and an honorary member of the Secondary Office. And with me, I have Amanda Kingery, who is our Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Schools. I also first want to echo your remarks. I want to thank all of the staff at Southeast that came up and spoke. I also want to especially give a shout out to Alan and Andrew. You guys are amazing. Like, I want to be like you when I grow up. That was pretty good. To do it in this venue, in this forum, it's pretty impressive. So thank you both. So as we begin, we wanted to talk again. We're here to talk about Southeast and some of the challenges that we're facing there due to overcrowding. As we begin, I want to start by sharing that this is not the first time that we're looking at Southeast. We've been discussing Southeast for a couple of years now. There's been some interesting trends in terms of enrollment, and you'll see that when you look at the 10-year enrollment figure. But COVID certainly created some interesting challenges for us in terms of the enrollment trends. And again, that led us to kind of put a hold on some things that we had previously thought about moving forward. But as we look at the area, again, we've been discussing the area for a while. The area is growing, there is no question about it, and it's one of the few areas within our city and within the boundary of the Wichita Public School that has the potential to continue growing. The other piece that I want to talk about and is that the trends for some of the projections that we'd previously built were made based on the assumption that they were keeping around 73.8% of their kids. And you'll see this as we move forward later, but keep in mind the 73.8% of the students, because now they're keeping more of their students. As someone mentioned earlier, this is a good problem to have. We do have more students that are wanting to stay at Southeast and that are staying at Southeast. Again, like everything else, good things often come with other challenges, and that's why we're here tonight to discuss with you some of the options that we're proposing. The last piece is the functional building capacity for that building is listed at 1982. And I want to make clear, because a question came forward about the functional building capacity. This number was built a couple of years ago when we contracted with RSP and Associates. They walked our buildings, they looked at all the programming within the building, all of the classrooms that within that building, to look at, and then they looked at the ideal classroom sizes for each one of the classes that we offer, and that's how this 1982 was developed. It doesn't take into account any staffing pieces because, again, it's not based on square footage. It's based strictly on the programming that's in that building and all of those pieces. As we move forward in the next steps, we will review that functional building capacity, but again, it was reviewed by Southeast administration at the time when we did the study to ensure that it was accurate, and they gave their seal of approval at the time. But again, that is something that we will revisit as that has come up. So now we want to look at district trends and Southeast boundary trends. As you look, your graph on your left is what the current grade level distribution of all of the students that currently reside in the Southeast boundary. On your right is the grade level distribution of our entire system. And granted, the numbers are off because obviously the system on your right includes more students. But what we're seeing system-wide, which mirrors a little bit of Southeast, is that our pain point, or the largest class in our entire system, is your 9th grade class. Again, we wanted to give that distribution, and their numbers are a little bit all over the place. I am not saying that we use this as an indicator for growth, because that area is growing and will continue to grow. As we look at their enrollment, again, from 2012 all the way to 2022, we started out around just a little bit over 1,500 kids in 2012. That enrollment went down. And then as the area started growing in the mid to late 2000s, we started to see an increase. You see that dip in 2020, which was COVID related. And again, that was part of the reason as COVID came into the picture, it completely messed up enrollment numbers, including some projections that we had RSP and Associates build for us prior to this. And so we were apprehensive to move just because we weren't sure if the numbers were stabilized. Last year, as we started to have more discussions about Southeast, some of the options that you'll see, the longer term options, were things that we discussed at the end of last year, because last year their enrollment creeped up above their capacity, and so we knew that it was time to really get moving on some options for them. And then this year, they're sitting at 2192. Again, their functional building capacity is 1982, so there are about 210 students over what their functional capacity is registered at.
Okay,
Okay, so next we're going to discuss some of the recommendations that we made at the end of last school year as well as the beginning of this school year, and we've broken it up into two different pieces. So we're going to talk about from the recommendations what was actually implemented, and then some of the recommendations that were not implemented as part of the short-term recommendations. So at the end of last year, we made recommendations for all this. We were going to open it up for 50 Northeast Magnets or 50 Southeast students who had applied for Northeast Magnet that were on the wait list to open up some more slots for them to attend. We did offer 43 students the option to go to Northeast Magnet. Of those, 27 accepted it. Another recommendation that we made for short-term solutions for some of the issues or for the overcrowding is to decline all of the special transfers that were coming into Southeast. So those are students who are applying to come to Southeast that aren't, that is not their base school. And so of the 82 special transfers that were requested to come in, 22 were declined and 60 were accepted. Another recommendation was to allow any student who applied for a special transfer outside of Southeast to another high school within 259 that we allow them that opportunity to go there. Even though you can approve it for a student to go to the other building or to at least apply for a special transfer, it doesn't automatically mean that they will be accepted on the end of the other high school. There were 128 students that requested a special transfer out of Southeast. 81 were denied and 47 were approved for them to seek that opportunity. Also, we opened an ESOL program at Heights High School. It's a brand new program this year, and that took around 30 Southeast students for that program. Now, some of the recommendations that were also made at the end of last school year that we did not implement at this time was considering students a choice to go to Heights High School. There is a portion of the Southeast boundary that is kind of in the northwestern portion of Wichita that included around 260 students. And so that was one of the considerations, is to offer up those special transfer for those 260 students to attend Heights, but that was not implemented. Another recommendation, and the next two really weren't viable options, but they were part of the brainstorming process, since we wanted to make sure that we shared that with you. We did discuss portables. Portables really weren't a viable option just for the simple fact it was going to take. It wouldn't be here at the beginning of the school year. We also know the expense that comes to that. With that is pretty large, but really we were trying to take care of immediate action, and that wouldn't have helped with that situation. And then we briefly discussed program moves, and there were lots of reasons to not do that as well. Then we came back this school year, seeing kind of what Fabian was talking about. We saw the trend. We saw that increasing. We started to see not official enrollment yet in August, but we did see the numbers, the preliminary numbers that were coming in with concern. So we made some additional recommendations. Again, I'm going to share it with you into two different parts. The first one is what we recommended, and that's currently going to be implemented, was adding long-term subs to help with the overloads and class sizes. And so that is something that we are implementing, that we are working on getting those teachers to help with that. Other recommendations in August, when we started seeing this, that we did not implement, we brought back that option of the Heights choice for those 260 students to allow them an opportunity for a special transfer to Heights. And then we know that we still have more students that were on the wait list, Southeast students that are on the wait list for Northeast Magnet, and there's currently 62 of those students, to open up more seats at Northeast Magnet for those students to attend there. And then last recommendation that was not implemented is was allowing the rest of those special transfer requests that were originally denied, but allowing them the opportunity to go to the schools that they originally requested, with the exception of North and East High, because we know that North and East are also very large and have their they have a large population. So when you take away North and East, there's around 23 students left that would have that opportunity.
So as we look at Southeast current enrollment, and this is based on official enrollment from September 20th, when we analyze enrollment figures, first we look at the school's enrollment, and that is what your first column is. That is the grade level distribution by in the number of students in each grade level. So they have 2192 students. Now the way that we analyze boundary changes and shifts is we look at the number of kids that reside. That is the total number of high school students that attend the Wichita Public Schools that reside in the Southeast boundary. And that number is 2662. Of those, about 2,008 are currently at Southeast. So they're keeping about 75.4% of their students. As I mentioned earlier, they were keeping about 73% of their kids. So you saw an increase in the number of students that are staying there. Again, that's a good thing. More kids want to stay in their neighborhood school. But you tag that on to the fact that enrollment within the boundary increased, and you have overcrowding, and that's part of what we have there. But again, I do want to make mention that it is a positive thing that more kids are wanting to stay in their neighborhood. And if you go back further years, you see that it was even less the percentage of students that were staying there. Again, the 662 students of the 2662, there's a little bit, over 600 or so that are going to other schools. Those are distributed between Northeast Magnet. They have special transfers to other schools. Some are at the IB program, but they are within the Wichita Public Schools. Again, they're just not attending Southeast. And then there's about 184 students that do not reside in the Southeast boundary that are attending Southeast, and those are a mixed bag of special transfers, a few special program moves that are a handful of ESOL students, as well as special education students that are attending that building. But when you look at their overall enrollment, again, that's the bigger picture. So the number of kids that reside are 2662. The number of kids that actually attend from those 2662 are 2008.
So now we want to talk about some of the challenges and realize this is not a comprehensive list, but these are some of the challenges that have been brought to us that have been seen with some of the overcrowding, starting with as simple as the arrival or dismissal in the morning and the afternoon. When you're talking about traffic flow, that's just the amount of vehicles that are trying to come in and out of the building on a day-to-day basis, which is also part of the transportation issue on the right side of the bullets. Transportation with Southeast High School, because there is no safe way for students to get to school. All students are eligible for transportation, which means they have a very large amount of buses. And I know one of the students mentioned the overcrowding on the buses, and that's where you see some of that too, because we don't have necessarily all the bus drivers. We know that we have to combine routes and so forth. As far, we also heard from probably some of the students and staff, the transition between classes is when you have more bodies that are in the hallways, it tends to get a little more crowded, especially when you're at intersections or coming down the stairs and so forth. CLC was something that was mentioned, the early dismissal on Wednesdays, which also aligns with the transportation piece too. When most of your students are there that ride a bus. Unlike other high schools, during CLC time dismissal, a lot of students they leave at the end of the day. Southeast does not have as many students that leave at the end of the day as some of our other high schools. Lunch is something that we've heard about, that currently there's one lunch for all of the students, and so we know that there's a lot of students who are either in one area trying to find spaces for them or waiting for food sometimes could be an issue too. Class sizes, there's a difference between the class size and small classroom size design. Class size is really the number of students, and we heard from Ms. Farmer about that too, the large class sizes that are happening because they have more students. But then with that, we've also heard that some of the concerns with Southeast High School, that some of the classrooms are smaller than other classrooms. So when you have a lot of students in there, the size of a classroom does make everybody feel a little bit crowded. And then anytime you have more students, there's always a need for additional staff and support staff with there comes needs with more kids. And then lastly, what we've heard also is the concern with supervision and student safety and staff. So some of the things, I'm going to recap what we have done this semester already with some additional information that wasn't shared previously. So one of the things that we said, we opened up more spots to Northeast Magnet. So we already had students that went there at the beginning of this school year. Opening the ESOL program at Heights moved some of those students.
And Amanda?
Yes.
If just so the general public is listening, will you explain what ESOL is?
Yes, it's English as a second other language. So yes, they opened a new program for students there. The special transfers that we discussed earlier, not allowing special transfers in and allowing those that wanted to apply for special transfer to other buildings. So we did some of that for those students. We added an additional assistant principal who is currently their AD, but also is now becoming an assistant principal, so can take on some of those responsibilities of the assistant principal so they can help support in other areas that they were not able to support in prior years. We added one security guard at the end of last school year, and we've already have approval to add a second one. And so it's just a matter of getting that hired, getting that job posted and hired. So they'll have 2 additional security guards between spring and this year. Stopping reassignments and placements. When we talk about reassignments and placements, sometimes we have administrative placements in buildings from one high school to another. We're not doing that with Southeast. Also, when we talk about hearings and reassignments, no students that from other schools that are being reassigned will be reassigned to Southeast High School. We talked about the long-term subs already, and then the school also added 2 student success advocates to help support students, and that's basically what they do. They advocate for the students, they do small groups, they do mentoring, any way that they can help support students in the building.
So now on to the long-term solution, and I will clarify, and I think a couple of our speakers earlier spoke to this. We talk about the long-term solution. It's really a 1 to 2 year solution. We know that that area will continue to grow. And so as you will see next steps at the end of this presentation, we will present to you kind of what the longer term deal that involves more significant shifts is. This is really to provide that relief for the 20, if approved, for the 23-24 school year, and then again, thinking about the bigger picture piece that is coming down the pike, and we'll present that in a second. But again, the proposed long-term solution, or 2 to 3 year solution, however you want to look at it, is really a boundary change. And that boundary change is an area that's on the northwest part of the southeast boundary. And it involves elementary boundaries that are split. And you'll see them in greater detail here, but it is what used to be the old Carter area that is on the east side of Wichita, on hillside between 13th and 17th, moving east in that direction all the way up to Rock Road. And it involves part of the Adams Elementary boundary, as well as the College Hill Elementary boundary, part of the Jackson boundary, and part of the Price-Harris boundary. So again, Heights is and there's the location of Southeast High School. As we analyze, and again, we've been mulling this idea over for a couple of years now, in most instances, that area and the shift of this area, the potential shift of this area, puts students closer to Heights, the majority of the kids that live in that area, than they are to Southeast currently. So as we move, and I want to remind the board a little bit of kind of the process that we need to run through as we move. P 1371, establishing school attendance boundaries, is the boundary that guides any sort of boundary adjustment. This states that changes to boundaries must be submitted to the BOE on or before the second meeting in April. We want to follow due process. We're going to go out and get community feedback, get all of that. But our intent, provided everything goes well, will be to bring forward a recommendation to you well before April to give families ample time to prepare and to be able to prepare our schools. And I will share a little bit more of the timeline and where that is, but the timeline is going to be much quicker than this. So even as early as October, November, we'll be looking at doing some community listening sessions and then bringing back a recommendation a little bit after that.
Repeat what you just said.
In terms of October, November is when we're going to be doing listening sessions.
In the public.
Yes,
Okay.
public listening sessions, that's correct. So as we look at the
Fabiana, I'm going to also add, it's not just listening session for community, but it is also for staff. So we need to make sure that they understand that we will be out to their buildings and visiting with them as well.
as well as students too. We're looking at students.
And of course, we have student groups that we'll be out talking to too. So we're going to get all the stakeholders and gather input from those folks.
So as we look at the area in better detail here, as we look at College Hill, the northern portion of the College Hill boundary, which is part of the old Carter area, currently feeds to Coleman and Southeast. So we're looking at changing the high school feeder, and those students would now be assigned to attend Heights instead of Southeast. There are currently 61 students that reside in that building, so the R stands for reside. That is the number of kids that live in that particular area. Of those, 46 reside and attend, meaning actually attend Southeast of the 61. If you look at the Adams, and this again is the northern portion of the Adams Elementary boundary, there are 72 kids that reside in that area, of which 48 are currently at Southeast. There are also 80 students in the Jackson, that's the southern portion of the Jackson boundary, of which 62 currently attend Southeast. Important to note that the rest of Jackson's boundary already attends Southeast, so we would have a full high school feeder where this change be approved. And then the last portion is the Price Harris, and this is only the portion of the Price Harris boundary that currently is assigned to Coleman and Southeast. There are 169 students in that boundary, of which 104 are currently at Southeast. So if we were to make the move, if all students were to shift, if we were to make the move today, there would be 260 students that are currently at Southeast that would be reassigned to Heights High School. So that area then would just shift, and that entire boundary would be yellow at that point. As we look at the numbers, as I mentioned earlier, Southeast current enrollment is sitting at 2192. So if they were to lose all 260 students, and we understand that as part of the boundary process, some decisions will need to be made about grandfathering based on community feedback and all of those pieces. So we wouldn't anticipate that all 260 students would switch right away. This would be more of a gradual shift as we move. But if all students were to move, all 260, their enrollment would go down to 1932. Again, putting them 50 students over. I think the staff was very wise in understanding that, again, this is a shorter term move because it will be, that area will continue to grow. And so we will see them be over capacity again. So there'll be some bigger things that will need to happen down the line. Heights enrollment, Height is currently at 1294, so they're just under 1,300 students. If you were to add those 260 students, that would put them at 1,554. Which puts them over their functional capacity of 1526. Again, we don't anticipate all those shifting, and there are some pieces for the longer term future that we will discuss with you later on.
So last week, we shared some of the same information with the Southeast staff that were in attendance, and so we got information from them. We allowed them an opportunity to give their feedback on the presentation itself. And also, I know Mr. Harris had mentioned earlier that he had given you guys some information and feedback from departments. We actually did receive that as well. And so we went through and looked at all of that information, as well as the 26 staff members that responded. And so the next part of information that we're going to share is the feedback that we received after we took all of that information and compiled it together. Now, this part is just the 26 staff members that responded to the QR code. And this question was really asking, what do you consider to be the biggest concerns at Southeast? This was multiple choice, so they could click as many of the areas that they felt were a concern. As you can see, class size, which we've heard today, was the #1 concern from those that responded. And then going to student and staff safety, supervision, student safety, and then lastly, lunch. And so those are kind of the top 3 concerns that came out with their response. Another question that we asked were specific ideas to address any of these areas of concern. These were some of the things that we heard, not just from the respondents, though, but we took the information that was given to you guys from the departments, and some of it, if there was anything different, we added to this as well. And so some of the ideas to address the concern, we have one of the concerns was considering the impact on demographics and thinking about if we move those students, the 260 students, how would that impact the student population at Southeast? Another idea, and so when we go back to that, what the consideration is, consider what that impact will have and some other options. We also heard reduce the class size. Those were specific ideas that came out addressing, and some of that reducing the class size also went hand in hand with recommendations to revise the building master schedule that could potentially address some of those issues. Addressing the student behaviors, which we've heard today, to help with some of the concerns, not just with the overcrowding, but just with the student safety and staff safety in general. Thinking about allocating more staff, how can they receive more staff to help with the overcrowding, and then evaluating what we've talked about a couple of times already today. We know that this is going to be an ongoing issue. This is not just our recommendations when we say long-term are really in the next year or two, but a longer enrollment trend and looking at what does that look like at the other high schools and how can we kind of spread that out a little bit. So, as far as additional solutions to be considered, some of the things that came out too, some of the themes that emerged were pass cards for eligible seniors, and pass cards are an opportunity for seniors who are on track. They have to meet a special criteria, and so they take the courses that are needed, but then they have an opportunity to go into the workforce or do other things, college courses, that may not be on campus, so that alleviates some of the numbers there. The desire that they really want to continue that process of building that positive culture at Southeast as a solution, revising the boundaries for all high schools, which we mentioned in the previous slide, adding more security officers, holding students accountable for behaviors. There was a consideration for multiple lunch periods that came out, but that also, as we'll share a little bit later, some of these last ones, it was kind of split in half with the feedback. Some want more lunch periods, some don't want more lunch periods, and CLC was one of those as well.
Can you tell them what CLC is?
Yes, it's collaborative learning community, which is professional learning time for our high school teachers to be able to collaborate and work together because they don't have that opportunity during the day. So that's why we release at 2:30. And as I had mentioned earlier in the slide about CLC dismissal time, a lot of the students are still on campus. And so one of the recommendations is how can we get transportation there maybe at the 2:30 start time. Wanted to share that we did look into that. That is something that we've been trying to do, but my transportation expert over here, I'm going to let him explain why.
Yeah. We have a tiered system. As you all know, we have middle schools that dismiss at 2:10, and we occupy a large amount of buses for those. On top of that, we have early dismissal at our elementary schools often as we look, and so we need all hands on deck because our first tier has grown significantly too, and so that impedes our ability to be able to get buses to Southeast earlier. We looked at it, and I've had some communications with the building at the time. At one point, I thought we were going to be able to do it, but unfortunately, after talking to Lisa Riveros, we were unable to. So.
And then last but not least, I mean, there are other recommendations. These are the ones that stood out the most, was either expanding, adding on to the building so they keep and maintain the enrollment that they have, but adding more space so they can accommodate all of the students that they already have. And one of the recommendations was adding a 9th grade center as well, so either expanding or adding. So we've heard some of the things that we have implemented, some of the things that we've not implemented, and after, more feedback, we realized that even some of the things that we've implemented may not still be enough, that we still need to relieve that pressure a little bit. And so things that we can do immediately is allow those special transfers that we had talked about to go to to attend those other schools, which would be a portion of students. We talked about adding future ready advocates at specific times because we've heard, lunch might be a high time or the CLC dismissal. And so if we can get more support, it doesn't necessarily have to be future ready advocates, but that was one of the solutions, is to have people there during those times to help out. Adding a security officer, so we said that we already have that in place. It just needs to get posted and hired. And then allowing some of those students on the Northeast Magnet, the wait list for Northeast Magnet, to go ahead and go to Northeast Magnet. And so that's kind of the phase one that we can do immediately, that we can continue. Yes.
And I just want to make it clear that when we're talking about these solutions, these are for the students who originally were on the Northeast Magnet, not new people
Correct.
Applying tomorrow and then saying, oh, I want to go.
Correct.
Or the same thing for
Special
the special transfers.
That
We're
is
not just
accurate.
going to say, more special transfers can come. It's just the 81 that originally requested that can do that, because we don't want a lot of confusion and movement. We want some movement for sure, but we want to keep it organized, and so we'll start there.
Right. Thank you for clarifying that. That is accurate. So the last piece, the last 3 bullets are things that we still can do, but we did listen to some of the staff feedback. We did go through all of that information, and we know that these were the last 3 things were something that was kind of split with staff. Some were for, some not, and this is where you had talked about, Dr. Thompson, about getting more engaged with the staff. And so our team will be finding a time to go out to Southeast to talk with the staff to get more information before we go into this phase 2, the last 3 bullet pieces. But these are still, again, our recommendations, things that we will implement, and then what also we can still do at this time.
And so just to wrap up, again, some next steps for us to follow. First, we will evaluate, then implement the additional short-term solutions, those pieces that were mentioned in the last slide that we're going to do. Then we're going to be looking at preparing Heights and Northeast Magnet for potential additional students, potentially second semester, again, depending on what our other pieces do and how fruitful they are with moving students. Stakeholder input, this is really important. Again, we mentioned here October, November. We're working with our Strategic Communications Office, and we will release soon, probably within the week, a plan in terms of community listening sessions and where we're planning to go. Again, not only for the overall community at both Heights and Southeast, but also for staff and for students. The other piece that I don't think is listed here, but I do want to mention is I know that we mentioned earlier that some of the concerns about the plan was the diversity. We know that Southeast staff values the diversity within their building, and they want to retain that. We've already pulled in terms of the demographics of the 260 students that we have there, and so we are analyzing those pieces. So those are going to be part of the pieces that we'll take to the staff individually when we meet with them, and we'll also share with the public. So again, we hear you, and we're pulling that data so that we're able to share it with you.
And I also want to be clear, the schools that are part of the receiving, which is Northeast Magnet and also Heights, those faculty members, we will also be engaging with their schools so that as we're meeting with Southeast, that Heights and Northeast Magnet are also involved in those conversations as well, because we will not leave any stakeholder, no groups left out.
And again, the other pieces, as we get a communication plan, we communicate with stakeholders. We'll bring a recommendation to you, hopefully shortly after the listening sessions, depending on what we hear from the community, with the goal of implementation. The last piece is here, as I mentioned earlier, speaking to the long-term planning for us. We understand this is a 2 to 3 year solution, even though we're calling it a long-term solution. But next month in November, we're going to be bringing to you an official enrollment report. where we're analyzing, and we have a group called the Enrollment and Program Assignments Committee that meets. Right now we're meeting bi-weekly, and so we're gonna be analyzing all of our official enrollment numbers now that we have them, and we're gonna be bringing forward to you a report with all of those pieces. The hope is that as a part of that, we are able to tie that information, and then we're likely going to be requesting a full demographic study at that point to bring someone in from the outside to do that for us. I can analyze your current enrollment numbers. That's what I've done for years. What I cannot do is I'm not a demographer, and I do not have the crystal ball in front of me to tell you what it is for the future. And so we need to bring someone in that can look at our enrollment data, connect it to birth patterns within medium age of the households that live within the boundaries, as well as can look at platted lots to plan for future growth, and they can give us some projections into the longer term future that will aid us in making some of the longer term decisions that we need to in the future. So we can connect that demographic data to the facilities report that will be presented to you, as well as some pieces that are happening within the within the transportation committee, because that committee will start meeting here fairly soon, so that we can kind of paint you a full picture as we move. So again, expect that in November, a current assessment of where we are in terms of enrollment patterns, and then we'll make the request at that point for a demography study for us to move forward with that. So with that said, that's really what we have for you all. Now we're open to any questions or discussion that you may have.
I'll start with Julie. She brought this up as a board request. That's one reason why we wanted to make sure that everyone understood that this is not just started 2 weeks ago or 1 week ago, or it's actually been in a process now for over a year now. So Julie?
I want to thank you very much for this presentation. Stand addressed. I requested that this be brought, and I appreciate this and the thoroughness and the presenting to Southeast and including their feedback. Just want to thank you for all of your work, because I know you've worked really hard on this. Couple of questions and then a couple of comments. First of all, I want to speak to this functional building capacity issue that we've talked about, because that number is not going to be what's seen on architectural drawings. Architectural drawings relate to other numbers that are a part of code issues and that sort of thing. This functional building capacity is the number that RSP brought to us, the consultants that we hired, and it does relate to programs and how the building is utilized, not just the square footage and dividing numbers by numbers required, et cetera, et cetera. And so that 1982 functional building capacity for students. So the staff capacity, if you put the staff capacity, would go on top of that, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
that number is strictly for students based on programming and all classrooms, all of that.
Yeah, okay. So, but our enrollment, as we've talked about, is 2192. That functional student building capacity is 1982. You mentioned these numbers, Fabian. I'm just repeating what you said. But there's 210 still overcrowding. So to me, that communicates, as we've heard, we still have a problem that we need to continue to work on. So I just want to acknowledge that. Next, I want to move to slide 11. And on slides 5 and 7, we showed some things that had been implemented. And my math indicates to me that there was 126 additional overcrowding avoidance that we did, if I did all that math correct. But now these are those are actions that were already completed. These are actions that are going to be completed this summer. And my question is, and some of this was answered already, as far as the 2 additional security guards, one of those was filled in the spring, one is yet to be filled.
Correct.
How about the 3 additional long-term subs? Are they filled yet, or are they yet to be filled?
No, not that I am aware of. But I think that the process started about a week or 2 ago. So it just
Okay.
recently.
So there's
Yes.
still 3 long-term subs yet
Correct.
to come?
Correct.
Okay. Next, I want to move to.
Julie, I'm not going to interrupt you, but you said we were going to enter in and do it in the summer, and I want to just make sure that the community that's listening, it's the spring. We're talking about coming up, we're not going to work on this summer. We're going to be working on this for next semester.
I don't know why I would have said summer. That was just a misstep.
Yes,
So
and I know
thank
it
you
was,
for
but I just didn't want the
correcting me.
community or people that were listening to think this is going to happen this summer, because it's going to happen, we're going to
This
start
semester.
next
It
semester.
says actions complete. I was looking at the slide 11. These are actions that have been that are completed
Yes,
already
ma'am.
this semester.
That is correct.
Yes. Okay, so then if we go to slides 18 and 19, those are our feedback slides from Southeast. And I just want us to continue to collaborate with the Southeast faculty, as you mentioned that we would. And then to go to slide 20, which I think is what we're talking about the solutions that are yet to be implemented, that we are going to implement this fall. And that is, we are going to implement these right away, right? These to be implemented this fall, that will be right away.
If you're talking about I want to make sure I'm straight with you. The additional short-term solutions, that's the
Slide
slide here.
20.
And the first one says allow special transfers.
Yes,
future.
yes.
That is correct.
Okay, awesome. So those are going to be right away, and the BOE and I in particular will stay on top of this and expect that action to happen.
Let me be clear, because I don't want to misspeak and say she said this.
Okay.
So if you take a look, there are some of these items on this 1, 2, 3, 4 that are immediate, and then there are some that are going to happen at semester. So
Okay.
let's be clear. The second, if you look at the first one, it says allow special transfers that were submitted this year to be able to attend those schools. We will be doing that move at semester. Additional support by future-ready advocates at specific times, those can happen immediately.
Okay.
As soon as we get organized with the school of when they want them, we'll get them there. The additional security officer for Southeast has been approved. Just for the record, they have 1 SRO officer, and they have 5 security, which now they will have 6 security and 1 SRO officer at Southeast. And that is right now.
And then there's an additional one yet to be
That
hired.
will
was
give us
the
to
6.
6 and 1.
Okay.
So it'll be total of 7, 1 SRO officer, and 6 security.
Why don't you explain what SRO is?
Okay. I know. I told Amanda that, didn't I? SRO officers are commissioned police officers that are in our schools. Security officers are those who have been trained alongside of, and if I have some security officers up there, so tell me up or down, but they have had extensive training on many things. They do not carry they don't carry guns, but they do have some equipment that they carry, but they are not carrying the guns in the school. But the SRO officer is doing it. And they gave me a thumbs up, so I did good. Okay, thank you for that.
Am I correct? SRO is paid for by the police department.
That is not all accurate. How they are paid is that, so just think about a police officer. During the school year, they work with us. And during the summer months or when we're off, they actually are on the streets working
Right.
in the security. So what happens is we pay for a portion of them and the city pays for a portion of them. So they do not totally pay for them.
Yeah.
We actually pay for a lot of that, and then they pay for of the portion that they use in the other parts of the time when
But
they're
we
not
pay
with us.
for all the security.
Security is our employees.
Thank you. And then lastly, on slide 21, you've talked a lot about communication.
Wait a minute, one more.
Sure.
Second semester, be careful, we gotta be real, this was very important. Admit the current Southeast High School students on the Northeast Magnet waiting list to Northeast Magnet. And the reason why some of these can't happen right away is because we need to communicate with families to let them know that this is an option right now. That's the first thing. Once we know how many students are going to take us up on this particular offer, then we have to prepare Northeast Magnet for staffing and everything else, and then we have to prepare Heights for everything. So it takes a little bit of time, communicate with folks, get information, and then get the schools ready for the transition at semester.
Very good.
Sorry to disrupt you, but I just want to make it clear so we don't have any questions.
Absolutely.
All right,
We
thanks.
like clarity. And I also appreciate all of the communication and want to again emphasize continuing to communicate and follow up with the staff and the faculty at Southeast. So thanks again. Good work.
Thank you, Julie. Other comments or questions? Cheryl?
Thank you very much. This is obviously something all of us have lost sleep over, so we appreciate all of your hard work and your team's hard work. I want to follow up just a little bit about the short term, and I really appreciated the clarification of what's happening as quickly as possible and what we have to wait for semester for. But as we're doing these things, if a new idea comes into place, as we're working with staff and everything else, we're going to approve us moving forward, or at least we're going to discuss and vote on that tonight. But if something new comes up, will you just kind of begin to implement that and bring the information back to us, or are you expecting us to vote on each one of these pieces
No.
as they fall?
No,
Okay,
sure, we need to move.
That's what I
We
wanted
don't
to
have
make
time
real
to
clear.
wait. When there's an idea that comes up for Southeast, for instance, I'll just give an example because it's on the document. If we are exploring a different lunch structure, now don't get mad at me because I'm not saying we're doing it, we're asking you first, but just work with me, all right? This is just an example of what we could do. So let's explore a different lunch structure. If they say, yes, we want to do that, we're gonna just move on that. And we're gonna provide them with all the resources that they need to be able to do that, right? And we don't need to wait till the next month and that kind of thing because that impedes the progress being made. Now, if there's something major coming up, like I know we're gonna be working on board policies on suspension, expulsions, and behaviors, those things will come back to you, of course. But these things that we're talking about, solutions, whatever, if they come up with something that's not on this document that they thought about for tomorrow or whatever, we can do what we need to do there with your blessings to nod to say do that, which I know you're going to tell me too. So we'll do that.
Okay, and I wanted to make that clear to our public, because we don't want to be the roadblock that stops you and your teams from doing the right thing at Southeast. And, you know, I understand, literally, we are just about 9 weeks away from second semester now, maybe 10 weeks, but not very long. And there's a lot of work that's going to have to be done before semester to be able to make these changes. Some people may be anxious to make the transfers. Some may have decided, no, I don't want to go. And that's certainly their choices. We're not going to force students to move. My second question is, you talked about the demographer and bringing that back, because the boundary pieces we do have to approve. And we will welcome it before April, but we absolutely have to have it by April if we're going to make the change for the following school year, correct?
That is correct. Although right now, again, this solution, the boundary, because there is a boundary component to this that after community listening sessions, we're going to bring back to you for approval, for recommendation at that point. But again, the bigger boundary pieces, we are not looking at implementing next school year with the exception of this piece.
Well,
We're-
we've got to get a demographer in here because we're really looking
Yeah.
district-wide in some cases with changes for school-based boundaries, not just for Southeast,
Mhm.
but for several schools.
That is correct.
It will
I
not be
re-
for next
I
fall,
will
it'll be
repeat
the
that.
following year.
Exactly.
Because we have listeners, and I just want to make sure it's clear. We are not making any boundary changes today.
No.
And we're not going to be making them for the semester change. What we're doing right now is just looking at ways to help support Southeast in the term of this school term. We have to do a demography study and some other types of things and listening sessions and things before we even bring any kind of boundary changes to the district. So please don't panic that there's going to be a boundary change today or tomorrow or even next year. It could be some work for Southeast in particular, but there will not be any district-wide boundary anything for the next coming school year.
Yeah, we're a long ways from that
That
because
is
we have to
correct.
have community meetings with parents and students and community members and staff. I mean, that's a big deal when we start doing that.
That is
And I agree
correct.
with you. Thank you for that clarification. Just one more thing, and this kind of ties that demography piece, which is we're going to have to hire someone to do that. Some of these other solutions, like adding another security officer, adding some more personnel for the Future Ready advocates and so on, all of those cost money. And Hazel leaned over to me and said, what's the budget for this? And where's the money coming from? Is it going to be through our ESSER funds? Do we know that?
We will not do some things to support Southeast, period.
So we will be adjusting some of our line items in order to be able to afford the pieces that we need to do.
That is correct.
And I think that needs to be clear to the public as well. And that's kind of what that was a good question, and I didn't want to steal your thunder, but I think it needed to be asked. So I appreciate this. I think all of us feel the sense of urgency, and we don't want to ever downplay that. It's very important that we pay attention to our staff and our students and our community, and we're trying to be as quickly responsive as we can. I think the fact that we are now, as a district, involved in going out and talking to teachers, making sure that they're in agreement to things so that we stop the, hearsay that's floating through our community and the misinformation that's moving through our community. Because Dr. Thompson's clarified many of those things this evening, and I've heard that. I've heard that, we have 2,400 kids out there. Well, we don't, but we have too many. It's not 2,400, but we still have too many. So thank you very much.
Kathy?
Thank you. Oh, super presentation, and I hope the community also understands it. There is one part, though, and it is on slide number 12, page 6, and it's about the boundary change. There's a lot of people that might be listening who might be getting confused because we just passed a boundary change. Can you explain for the community of those that might not understand, this is not what we just passed?
No, the boundary, the changes, the mapping changes that you recently approved have to do with voting and voting districts. This is where we assign students to school. And these are school attendance boundaries. And that is what this recommendation is, to make a slight move to a certain portion of how we assign students to our district, to reassign them from Southeast to attend Heights.
Diane and then Hazel.
I just want to thank you guys for being here and giving a presentation. I hope that answered some questions that were raised from the speakers. I also want to thank the Southeast staff and parents and students that have been here tonight to come speak to us. Especially for students, it might be a little intimidating to come speak publicly, but I do want to thank you guys for taking time out of your day to address some of these issues. I also want to just bring more attention to the community listening events that are going to come up quickly at the end of the month, maybe, and into next month. I hope we have more than one session so that way we can get as much community feedback as possible. And so I really want to see a shift from identifying problems to talking about solutions. Because especially from teachers, you guys are in the classrooms day in and day out. So we've identified some problems. I'd really like to hear what your solutions are, because you sit there when you're dealing with a problem day in and day out. I'm sure you guys have some solutions that you've dreamt up as well. So let's hear solutions when we have the community listening events, so that way we can implement more of what you guys are thinking and feeling from the classroom. So come with your ideas to the community listening events, and I look forward to those, and I'm sure our strategic communications will get that information out, and everybody share it with your staff members, with your parents, with your friends, on social media, so that way we can get as much feedback from the stakeholders that this is going to impact as possible.
Thank you, Diane. Hazel?
Actually, my comment had to do with community listening sessions as well. One thing that we've heard in the past is that not enough time is given to the community when you're asking for feedback. And so I was just wondering, how would you be advertising the community listening session, and how much time are you going to give?
So we will have our listening sessions, and there will be multiple opportunities. Again, as I stated, we will have input from families and community members, we'll have input from staff, and we'll have input from students. So we'll have a variety of ways in which we do that. Sometimes people say they don't want to come, but they want to still give input. We always, whenever we have those opportunities, we have our info at usd259.net, where people that cannot show up will show up online and give us input in writing. We will be out at the schools, like I said, for students and with staff. But as far as community, we have not talked about how many, but we'll have as many as we need to do that, to gather as much input. But we'll always keep things open at info@usd259.net, and they can give input. Like they said something, then they thought about it and went to sleep, and they woke up and they thought of something else. They can go back to info@usd259 and just continue to put information there, because that's where we pull all that information to be able to provide, to add to the input that we're getting from the listening sessions. And we did this when we did our strategic plan. We were out in different parts of the city, in different places, so we would try to do one maybe in the area, different parts of where these students and families come from, where they're living and where our boundaries are, so that we get input and not just everybody having to drive all the way out to Southeast, because that's a long drive for some people that may live in another portion of the city that attend Southeast. So we'll take that into consideration as well. So that's kind of what we'll do as far as listing, and we'll be open for suggestions on that and even locations.
Thank you. I also want to say thank you for being, Dr. Thompson and your team, for being proactive and taking the time that you've taken to really study this and make this excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Hazel. Okay, seeing no further comment, the board shares this sense of urgency with both the public, the staff, and the students. Thank you very much. Patrick, next item, please.
Next item, letters, language essentials for teachers of reading and spelling professional learning.
Dr. Thompson, would you like to introduce this topic?
Yes, this is a response to board member Kathy Bond. She asked, went to some training, and she was really excited about what she saw and requested that we have a presentation on this work. And so we are answering her request. And so we have two of our wonderful ladies from Learning Services that will share with us Learning Services, but it looks like I have an intro by my colleague, Michelle Ingenthron.
Good evening, Dr. Thompson, President Reeser, members of the board. I'm Michelle Ingenthron, Assistant Superintendent for Elementary Schools. And here with me tonight, co-presenters Amanda Sharshall and Holly Ingram, Executive Directors of Curriculum and Instruction and Learning Services. We are here to thank you for your investment in our staff and students through LETRS training, as well as give you a brief overview of this professional learning and how it connects to our strategic plan. LETRS stands for, you have it in your handout, Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading and Spelling. You may have attended LETRS, some of you attended LETRS, and we appreciate you joining us. We hope that you found it interesting. As you know, we have a strategic plan, and we want to be the district of choice in this region where students can dream, believe, and achieve. Within our plan, we have long-term goals and also strategic themes. LETRS is professional development for educators, and we are using that as an investment in our staff. This is the purpose and driving force behind LETRS for 259 educators, to help better understand how reading develops so that we continue to work towards our third grade reading proficiency goal. Back in April, we came to you with an update on our third grade reading proficiency goal. We shared with you this graphic of the Big Five, and we shared how critical it is that both the foundational skills you see there and more complex skills are taught to our pre-K through 5 students to prepare them to become proficient readers. You will see the connection this evening between this previously shared graphic and some of the theoretical models in LETRS as we move through this presentation. Specifically, the tie to Scarborough's rope, which I know all of our elementary teachers that are listening are saying, yeah, I know all about that rope. It's pretty interesting. And also through the simple view of reading. So I will turn it over to my colleagues.
So as mentioned, we've previously shared with you the gains our students are making thanks to our staff and leaders in the area of reading. But we still have work to do, and Wichita is not alone in addressing the complex issues with addressing reading difficulties. So we want to share a little bit of the research with you on reading development to set the stage. There's national concern about the achievement of students across our nation, specifically in the realm of literacy. The National Institute of Child Health and Human Development characterized reading difficulty as a major public health concern that deserved high priority on the national research agenda. The National Assessment of Adult Literacy showed that a sizable portion of adults in the United States had not learned to read. Somewhere between 21 and 23% were at the lowest level of literacy, unable to read with fluency, accuracy, and comprehension necessary to decipher newspapers, health guidelines, schedules, or manuals. According to a 2015 National Assessment of Education Progress research study, 31% of all fourth graders have scored below basic in reading, and an additional 33% have only achieved basic competence. Unless students learn to read by the end of first grade, they are highly likely to remain poor readers and suffer academic difficulties across all subject areas. More and more jobs require not only a high school diploma, but post-secondary additional and career preparation. Reading, writing, and technical skills are necessary for these types of jobs. Additionally, a recent survey by the National Council on Teacher Quality, a policy and research group focused on improving teacher preparation, have revealed that scientifically grounded concepts about learning to read and information about language structure are not taught in the majority of teacher preparation institutes. 78% of the schools reviewed were deemed inadequate in providing preparation for teaching struggling readers, a non-specific term that includes students with learning disabilities and learning difficulties.
So as Holly stated, we are making some gains here in Wichita Public Schools, and I'm excited to be back at the table with you again to share some of those. On this slide in particular, this is pulling data from 3 falls in a row. So you'll see fall of 2021, 2022, 21 and 22, and 22-23 school years. And down the left side, you'll see what screener we decided to pull data from, and across you'll see what the percentage of students proficient in those screeners was. So I'm gonna highlight a cohort, and then I'm gonna highlight 1 grade level's screener. So if you look down across, or diagonally, I'm sorry,
In this second grade cohort, from year to year, you can see 37.2% proficient to 48.2% proficient. So our students are growing year to year in some of these early screeners. But also, if you look at first grade nonsense word fluency from year to year, we have seen a 30.1% proficient starting point to a 41.7% starting point this year. And that is due to our teachers, our leaders, and our instructional routines. What we have chosen to put our energy and focus on is paying off through a pandemic. So if you think about where we have been while we are making these gains, it has been through pure effort of our leaders and teachers out in schools, pushing through and doing what's best for kids instructionally. The next set of data I want to talk about is about progress. We see progress before we see achievement. So when I was at your table last April, we also talked about this. And what I've highlighted here on the right is percent of students in some of our screeners who are showing realistic and ambitious growth. And everything that's in yellow says that 60% or more of students were showing the growth that we will need to turn the tides of reading performance here in Wichita Public Schools. To reach our third grade reading proficiency goal, we want to see more and more students falling into ambitious growth. Realistic is great, but ambitious is what it's going to take for our students to make gains. The last set of data I wanted to share with you is our screener data from this fall. So right now this represents individual types of screeners and the percentage of students who are not currently proficient in those screeners. We know that students coming to us will make lots of gains throughout the year, so I hope these numbers actually show opportunity for us to do so. And I wanted to really highlight first grade word segmenting. So first grade word segmenting, our first graders are coming in at the highest proficiency levels we have seen, and we shared that with you last spring as well, that we were excited about these numbers. And again, it's because of the work our teachers are doing, our leaders, and our instructional routines. So some of you were with us on September 6th when we had Letters for Administrators Training Day 1. And hopefully that opened your eyes to the fact that teaching reading is rocket science. So when we think about ourselves as readers, we don't even think about how we became readers and all the complexity it took to learn how to read and all of the things our teachers taught us to get us there. And this rope really outlines all of the facets of learning to read and how the brain learns to read. So at the bottom of the rope, you have word recognition. And it's boxed right now for volume 1 because that ties to the type of letters work teachers might be doing. So this is the example of volume 1. So our teachers who are in this volume right now are learning about word recognition, including phonological awareness, the sounds of our language, how those sounds come together to make words that make meaning. They're also learning about decoding or phonics, the alphabetic principle, letter and sound correspondence, and they're learning about sight word recognition, which when I was in school was a Dolch list or a Fry list of words, but now we know through science that it's any word a student or person can read as if by sight, and that most words are actually decodable. The top of the rope represents language comprehension. That is volume 2. It looks a lot like this, but the lady on the front is different and the content inside is different. So our teachers who are in volume 2 are learning about background knowledge, vocabulary, the structures of our language, writing connections, and all of the things that we would expect students past third grade, that's what we assess on our state assessments, to be able to do with accuracy and fluency, all to come together to make a strategic, proficient reader. So if you are more math-minded, Goff and Tunmer also have a simple view of reading that gives us some information about what happens when parts of the strands of that rope are weak, or if they are non-existent. So if we have a student who cannot read the words on the page, but when you are reading a story aloud to them, they can answer every question you ask, character, setting, plot. That student is still not a proficient reader. If you change the equation, you have a student who can read every word on the page, but they can't answer anything about what they've read. They are still not a proficient reader. Even when a student, in these next two examples, has a little bit of proficiency in one area or the other, or a little in both, they are still not a proficient reader. Parts of their strands of their rope are weakened, and that is what we do instructionally. As we find those areas, we target them with instruction, and we grow them into a 1 × 1 = 1 equation student who is a proficient reader and ready to tackle really anything that we put in front of them past first grade. Because as Holly stated, if we're not reading by first grade, it puts us behind already. A very important thing to think about here is science of reading is a hot topic nationwide, and many respondents to this movement are saying that the science of reading is only about one part of the rope, and that's word recognition. And I want to assure you that through the Letters Professional Development Platform, they're actually learning about both. They'll learn word recognition, and they will learn language comprehension. So this is just a brief reminder that Letters is not a curriculum. So this is not something we put in front of students at all. This is a professional development series for staff only. So Holly and I are going to take you through a little bit about what the Letters platform for educators looks like. So this is a glimpse into what teachers are actually working on. They'll have an online component, but they will also have the printed textbook material, so they work in tandem together. The content is gated to make sure that activities and learning happen in a sequential order. Participants can return to any content they choose while their license year is still in effect. So for a full year, if I wanted to go back to something I learned 3 weeks ago, I would have access to that learning still. In total, there are 3 volumes. There are 2 that are letters, volume 1, volume 2, and then there's one that's letters for early childhood. And in each volume, there are units, and those units are chunked in digestible bites so that it's easier to understand and go apply in classrooms and come back and collaborate around. So in each session, participants also are provided with that research base that we referenced earlier, and there's classroom videos of teachers doing the activities with their students in explicit instruction in whole group and small group activities. The activities are interspersed throughout the learning to allow the teachers to apply their growing understanding of the content, such as multiple choice questions, true and false, drag and drop, rating scales that affirms your understanding as a learner. I'm going through this learning right now as a secondary math teacher, and I am learning a lot. But as a math teacher, that feedback of did I get it right? Do I understand it? Do I need to go back? Is very helpful. So it helps keep our teachers motivated going through that. Additionally, there's opportunities for them to journal and reflect on what they're learning, and they can always go back and read those journal entries throughout just to remember what did I learn in this? What was my reflection? So there is an integrated bridge to practice. So these activities are like case studies. So teachers would choose 3 students. They would learn some of the content. They would actually go apply what they're learning with those students in real time in the classroom, whether that's through planning for instruction, delivering an assessment, looking at student work. And they would come back to their team to collaborate around what they're seeing. There's also interspersed assessments and activities, checks for understanding, quizzes, and post-volume assessments that are used to check for understanding along the way. So throughout the course, you can always see your progress. So you can see how far you are through a unit, how far you are through a certain lesson you're on. And by completing all the content, our staff will earn a certificate of completion. And if they score 80% or higher on the final assessment, they earn a certificate of mastery from Letters. Additionally, our building leaders and coaches can check in on progress for how their teachers are doing, and they themselves, that each teacher can see their progress in the system as well. So to give you the scope of this initiative, this program, we wanted to share some numbers with you. So we have approximately 1,400 staff, certified staff, who are in Volume 1, or the bottom part of the rope, the left side of the simple view of reading. They're learning about phonological awareness, phonics, and things like morphology, the study of word. We have approximately 110 staff who are in Volume 2, which means that they completed Volume 1 on their own time in previous years, because we've been offering Letters as a system for a number of years. And they did that on their own time, after school, and that's 110 of them, which is a big number. And those people are learning the top of the rope. They are looking at language comprehension, writing, vocabulary, background knowledge. We also have 90 people who are involved in Letters for Early Childhood, which is a combination of both parts of Scarborough's rope, including all of our pre-K staff, and a number of those people who have completed Volume 1 and Volume 2 on their own over the past couple of years. They were able to select whether they wanted to do early childhood, and a large majority of them, specifically primary teachers, did elect to go through a third Letters year, which is awesome. We have 100 administrators in Letters for Administrators. That is a primer level course that covers all of the content in a very high level way, but also how you implement Letters as a leader in your system, including MTSS information, assessment, diagnostics, etc. Through Letters, you can also become a facilitator, a local facilitator of content. So you can go train, very rigorous, 4 full days of training, where you learn to deliver this content to a variety of audiences. You have to become a master and expert at it. We have 35 of our instructional coaches, teachers, and leaders who are currently local facilitators able to deliver this content. And we are going to be signing up 50 to go through this training next summer. This is part of our sustainability movement so that we do not have to contract out for the service of national facilitators at Letters. We can train this in-house with our own people who understand our system and who are also masters. None of this would have been possible without your support. You have approved some things that have come across your table already that are making all of these things happen, and we appreciate that. Another important number is 65 and 70%. So last year, we brought together a focus group of teachers, administrators, coaches, all over our district, and we really asked them to help us build the best possible plan for the best possible outcomes. They had a lot to say. They asked the hard questions. We were tired coming off of the years that we had had. This was going to be a big rollout. It was going to require very rigorous work. And so we wanted to make sure that our plan was as clear and kind to our teachers as possible. We are continuing that group into the 22-23 school year. A lot of those are teachers who are returning to our focus group. They were in the focus group last year. But there are additional staff, including new teachers, ESOL, pre-K, coaches, categorical, et cetera. And 70% of those people are teachers. So our focus group is heavily dependent on teacher feedback to let us know how the plan is going and what needs adjusted along the way. Our model of delivery is all core and support teachers pre-K through 5. So there are some groups that will not be participating at the elementary level. These are your PE teachers, your social workers. They do have the opportunity to join a secondary cohort that happens after school, which is the former model we used to have, which was voluntary. But all of our pre-K through 5 core and support are required. All of our administrators and coaches are going through some form of Letters. Many of those 85 people who are going to be or are facilitators are our coaches. We have provided time to complete the work during what was already existing professional learning time during their week. And we have also added bridge to practice time during already existing team times during their week. We are also offering college credit through Newman University at a very low price so that they can continue their continuing education steps and tracks movement. So we're going to end with this quote. So I won't read it all to you, but just about all children can be taught to read and deserve no less from their teachers. Teachers, in turn, deserve no less than the knowledge, skills, and supported practice that will enable their teach to succeed. And as Amanda stated earlier, one of the authors of Letters says, teaching reading really is rocket science, and this helps our teachers to do it well. At this time, we'll take any questions or discussion that you have.
Kathy, since this was your board request, I'd like to start with you.
Thank you. This is something I'm very excited about because if you can read, you can do anything in life. And it does start down in the first grade in the primary years of their life. Michelle, thank you so much for offering this and having this for our teachers. It's kind of like, I would look at it like if I was a teacher and I was stressed out with the things going on, this would remove me from that and I could just better myself, educate myself, learn the science of that. When I was in the 4th grade, I had to go to summer school because I had a reading comprehension problem. I could read the words, but I did not understand what I was reading. It happens, and it doesn't mean that it's bad. It just is, and there was a solution to it. So thank you for this presentation, for the board and for the community. I'm just very excited about this because I know that our reading levels are going to increase probably faster than what we realize it's going to happen because reading is exciting. Thank you.
And I'm just going to put a plug in. The people that are receiving this training, because I always want to give a shout out to where first of all, learning begins at home when kids are born. Even before the womb is when these things begin to happen. However, formally, when we start the process, it starts at pre-K. So our pre-K teachers and beyond are learning this work. So I want to make sure we give a shout out to the pre-K teachers who also give us that strong foundation to start us out on our journey once they get here with us. So I just want to make that shout out.
Cheryl?
Thank you for your presentation. I do have a few questions, and one of them is the time frame for the training. You said it was done during team time. But how long does it take to complete one of those volumes?
That's a great question. So it is, and for per volume, it's different. So volume 1 is definitely the most complex. It has the most theoretical models. It's about 22 hours of work between both the online component and textbook reading. And that does not include what a teacher would go back into the classroom and apply to bring back and show off artifacts of their learning.
Okay. And they do that in their team time too? Is that where they show off the artifacts?
Yes, Bridge to Practice is team time.
And is this self-paced?
Yes.
Are our teachers, if somebody decides they want to move through it quickly, they still can do that, and they just bring back artifacts even though others in their group may not be at the same place they are?
Correct. We are, that's the beauty of this program. So we're able to say if I'm a slower reader or a faster reader, I process faster, I process slower. It doesn't matter where my colleague is because we're both learning at our own rate. When we come back together to bring our artifacts, the structure of those conversations is very general, so it doesn't matter where we are. We're discussing how our learning is impacting our students.
Okay. And because they're doing it during team time, they wouldn't be paid additionally, but if they wanted to do this during the summer or times when they aren't on contract, would they be paid?
We have traditionally done that and are still doing that, yes.
Okay. Are any of the colleges checking into this to teach in their reading classes?
We have had discussions.
We are meeting with our local universities as we speak to talk about how or where they can fit this in, because this is not just a USD 259 issue or curriculum that we're learning with our staff, but it's not a curriculum. It is learning, professional development for our teachers. They are doing this all across the state. And so I think across the state, there are conversations at the higher level of how we can embed this into the programming for our teacher ed programs.
That's good. Yeah. Well, I am excited about the data that you showed to us because both the trend data following a child from 1st, 2nd to 3rd grade is going up, but also the flat line, 1st graders at this year, the next year, the year after, they're coming in higher. So we're doing some things that are obviously right to produce kids that are truly readers by the end of 3rd grade, which is our strategic plan goal. So thank you very much for this work, and I'm excited to see us continue doing it. As an old reading teacher, I just love to see this happening.
Ernestine, I've got myself, Julie, and then you, and then Diane. Ernestine, and Diane. Sorry, talking to myself. Since we're talking about cleaning up a little disinformation, when you brought up the presentation about the FastBridge screening, one of the speakers happened to mention, kind of implied that we're not out in the school buildings and looking at what's going on. Last spring, I had a chance to actually sit in on one of those FastBridge, and it was actually by accident, so it was unplanned. A child and teacher was outside, and I was like, but the class was going on inside, and I was like, well, was this kid in trouble, or what's going on? And so I asked, and she said, well, we're doing a FastBridge screening. So I got to actually sit in on that, so it was a good experience for me. You made one statement that I thought was really important, maybe for the public to understand. You mentioned that we have to have, your phrase was progress before achievement. Could you explain that just a little further?
Yes. So we are looking for accuracy before we're going to see achievement growth. So for instance, if I want to perform well on a state assessment, that's an achievement test, I have to have progress in screeners beforehand. So I have to be able to accurately decode the words on a page so that my cognitive desk space is freed up to make meaning. So if I am struggling to decode the words, I will not have any energy, mental energy left over to understand what I'm reading to perform on a test such as that, which requires stamina.
Thank you. That really helps. And I also want to commend this whole board. I know each of you make school visits, so I appreciate that. Julie?
Yeah, mine is a quick question. We have our third grade reading proficiency as our strategic planning goal. So I've always been under the impression that there's something important about third grade. And yet in your presentation, you said unless students learn to read by the end of first grade, they are highly likely to remain poor readers and suffer academic difficulties. Could you just clarify for me what it needs to happen at first grade and what needs to happen by third grade?
Yes. So by first grade, we are learning along a continuum of skills, scope and sequence of skills, phonics skills. We have a majority of those by the end of first grade. We know our blends, we know our digraphs. Nonsense word fluency is a big indicator of future success because if I can chunk a small part of a word, then I can manage decoding a larger word with multisyllabic words. So we have taught the majority of our basic phonics skills by the end of first grade. We do move into more complex skills in second grade, such as clusters, letter clusters, or complex trigraphs. But by the end of first grade, we have taught a pretty large range of decoding skills needed to be successful.
And then what's the third grade marker then?
We should have the majority of our phonics skills under our hat by the end of second grade and be able to focus on language comprehension by third grade. However, in our district, with our percentages, we have to backtrack and make sure that we see some progress in those foundational skills to get there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ernestine?
We've been trying to bring this up, and have we seen that we've been doing this for several years. Have we seen any results of its improvement of, say, 6th, 7th, 8th graders? Do you know? I know you work primarily with elementary, but I'm hoping that means that they can carry it on into middle school.
Yes, that's the goal. We have been tracking elementary teachers who are trained in both Volume 1 and Volume 2 of letters, and I'm going to give a shout out to one specific teacher whose data I looked at the other day. And we do have a video I will share with Patrick to share with you of interviews that our strategic communications did with teachers trained, and it shows their data pops up, and it's fantastic. But Heather Mock, first grade teacher at Washington, 100% of her students showed ambitious growth in word segmenting last year.
Wow.
And she's letters trained Volume 1 and Volume 2 and currently going through early childhood. And she is among many teachers who we are tracking their data to say, is this working?
I am so impressed that the teachers are taking their own time and choosing. The teachers become teachers because they love it and want to be teachers. The University of California and the Aman Institute of its brain study, brain research, has found that when you learn to read, that it actually grows brain cells. The other part that people may not know is that when the brain cells grow, it releases like serotonin and makes the brain happy. So that learning to read makes you happy. And one more thing is that, and when that does release into the brain, and particularly the oxytocin that comes in, makes you really, really happy, that lasts for up to 2 weeks. It's measurable for up to 2 weeks in the brain. So learn something new, everybody, and you'll have a happy brain.
I think for your question about secondary real quick, so we've only really had a small cohort of teachers who've been being trained over the last few years, but this year we had 60 secondary teachers sign up to do the cohort. So while these skills should be in place before they get to us in secondary, the momentum you all have helped us move the ship, if you will, in elementary is trickling up. Our secondary teachers are hearing about the benefits in our elementary because we still have students with need that get to us in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So I think the benefits are going to shift up. I just don't think we've hit that critical mass for it to hit our data in secondary yet.
Thank you for sharing that, because one of the things that I know that secondary teachers have always said, if they come to me and they don't know how to read, I don't know what to do. And so this is a wonderful solution. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernestine. Diane?
Thank you for the presentation tonight. I appreciate that. I did attend the administration's briefing on this, and it was very, very interesting. I do want to thank Dr. Thompson for leaning into this, because it's been well understood that phonics is the best way to learn how to read, so thank you. And I do want to draw attention to slide 6, where this is a failure on colleges not teaching this to teachers. And that was a big discussion at the table that I sat at, was the administrators were frustrated that they were never taught this when they were getting their teaching certificate. So thank you, Dr. Thompson, for your leadership on bringing this to the district, because it not only helps students learn how to read, which is foundational to all other education, but it also helps kids that have dyslexia learn how to read as well. And that statistic is right around 25% of student population have dyslexia. So there's not a different program that they need. This also helps with those students. There doesn't need to be an additional identifying marker for that. So this is a great training. We have lots of room for improvement within our district, but I am grateful to see progress in the right direction. And thank you for sharing that report on the teacher from Washington. That is very encouraging, and that very commendable for her. So thank you on that. And yeah, I think that kind of sums it up. Thank you. This is approved. This is an approved professional learning series for the International Dyslexia Association. So it meets the state of Kansas's requirements also that all of our elementary licensed teachers are trained in dyslexia.
And I also want to reiterate, I know that everybody on this board is out in buildings, because half the time you're with me or you're out on your own doing your thing. And I appreciate you all being out. I'm going to extend an invitation. One of the things that I have been doing with the elementary office is that's what I go see every time I'm in a building, besides reading to kids and that kind of thing in elementary. But I go, it's right at the time when these routines that we're talking about are being taught in the schools, and I'm sitting in observing and watching the implementation of that in buildings and giving feedback around that. So the invitation is if any of you are interested in those opportunities to go in and observe that, then please let me know. And then I will work with the appropriate folks to ensure that we have a good time, especially when the teachers are teaching them, to be able to come out and observe that.
And we will continue to keep the reading progress in our strategic plan. That is a critical part of our plan that I think will be there for many years to come. So thank you. Patrick, I've been informed that we do need an executive, I'm sorry, is there any last questions or concerns about, or comments on this? Okay. Patrick, I have been told that we have to have an executive session. It's not in the official, do you need a motion to have an executive session?
Yes.
I move, before we have a motion to actually go, we have to add it to the agenda, yeah. I move that we add an executive session to our agenda at this time.
Second.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Motion carries 7-0. So executive session is now on the agenda. Julie?
And so I will move that the board recess into an executive session for purposes of consulting with the board's attorney, who will provide advice concerning the application of law as it applies to the district pursuant to the Kansas Open Meeting Act exception as allowed under KSA 75-4319, and the board will return from executive session to this room at 8:35.
Would you add 5 minutes for a 5-minute break?
Okay, and we can have a 5-minute break before we start, so that would be 8:40.
Is there a second? Second. Moved by Julie, seconded by Cheryl to move into executive session. Motion carries 7-0. We will return at 8:40. The Wichita Board of Education is returning from executive session. No action necessary or taken. Patrick, next item, please.
Next item, consent.
Diane, do you have any consent items to pull?
I do not.
Ernestine?
I do not.
I do not have any consent items to pull. Julie?
No items to pull.
Kathy?
C1 and C2.
C1, C2, Kathy. Cheryl?
I don't have anything to pull, thank you.
Hazel?
No, nothing.
I move that we adopt the consent agenda except for C1 and C2.
I second that.
Moved by Stan Reeser, seconded by Ernestine to adopt the consent agenda except for C1 and C2. One more time, Julie. There we go. Motion carries 7-0. Kathy, C1.
I just want to know what the contingency allowance is for.
I know, but since my friend is coming, I'm going to let him go after it.
Good evening. Luke Newman, Director of Facilities. The contingency allowance is basically just for unforeseens in the project that come up. You know, if we start excavating and uncover, you know, base materials we weren't expecting or something for the concrete subbase, that's an example of one where we might need a little extra money to cover over-X and recompaction. So it just gives us the ability to have that money available should we need it. It's not part of the contractor's contract until we add it to their contract. So it's basically money we just have available without having to come back to the board asking for more as a change order.
That's what I thought. I just
Okay.
needed clarification. I would like to move to item 1. I'd like to move to approve item 1. Thank you.
Moved by Kathy, seconded by Julie. Motion carries 7-0. Kathy, C2.
Don't leave yet. What you're talking about the new building, the new southeast building for this turf, right? Okay.
Correct.
How old is the turf at the new school right now? Is it as long as this building was up, 5 years?
Yeah, it's about 6.5 years old.
6.5 years old. And did we not have a warranty on that turf?
We did. But it is, so the warranty is not quite up yet, and we're still looking into whether or not we can potentially exercise some of that remaining warranty on the field. We've been working on getting in touch with the manufacturer. It's been a little bit challenging thus far.
Because if it's that bad, then if there's a warranty, they should replace it for free.
Yes, so we would have had 6.5 years of use out of that field. So the loss for us is those remaining, it's an 8-year warranty. So it'd be the remaining, basically 1.5 years of warranty that we would have left on it. So they wouldn't replace the whole field for free. We would just maybe get some money back for the years that we didn't get playing time out of that field.
Like the COVID years? Is that
Well,
really, I mean, when the schools were shut down.
But the field was still it was still being degraded by
With the
sun
weather.
and rain and all that. And we
Okay.
weren't playing on it, which would degrade it, contribute to it. But
I mean, this is almost $1 million.
it's a lot of money. So there's some history around why the field is degrading a little bit quicker than it should. When that construction took place, there was some dirt that had slid down in that bowl configuration in that field. Some dirt had slid down onto that turf, and so we had to extract the dirt. We paid the company some extra money to come out and extract that dirt, and they said that they would honor their warranty as part of that work. But the work that they did do, I believe that it contributed to some, I guess, premature degradation of that field. So we're looking into it. Like I said, it's just.
Well, it says that it requires immediate replacement. What is immediate to you?
So the fibers are pulling out from the field currently. It's still, it's still a field. It's still there, but because those fibers are so loose, it's actually a slip hazard. It passes the GMAX test and everything, and so there's not a concussion risk or anything like that, but because of the slip hazard, our athletic folks don't think it's safe to play on this fall, so that's why we're replacing it immediately.
So educate me on this. This turf is not something that can be repaired. It has to be replaced.
Once it gets to that point, yeah. The best thing you can do is maintain it on a yearly basis and groom it to keep it, to keep it up and to keep it playing well. And that's kind of the equivalent of repairing it. But yeah, once it degrades, it's just done and it needs to be replaced.
Have we been maintaining it?
Yeah, we groom it
have?
every year.
So it just sounds like it was some bad materials that you got.
I think there were a number of things contributing to it. I don't think it was the materials, honestly. I think it was the kind of the beating it took when we extracted that mud years ago, shortly after it was installed.
So if we approve this tonight, are you going to continue to try to contact the manufacturer from the old turf to get a reimbursement for us?
Yes, we're working on that.
That will also then offset some of this, hopefully.
Hopefully.
And will you come to us and let us know if
Sure,
they do
if that's what
come
you'd
back?
like.
I mean, I would like to know if you were able to go ahead and get a reimbursement. I think the district is owed that.
Sure.
If it's wrecking up before the warranty, I mean, I take my clothes back if they're under warranty and they're not working. I mean, a deal is a deal, right?
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Julie?
So who was the manufacturer?
The manufacturer was AstroTurf, and our new standard is Hellas.
Just curious.
Yeah.
So I guess I need to make a motion. This hurts because this is a lot of money, and I just am not ready to spend it right now. But I need to trust you that you're saying that we need to have this right now. I really would like to see some money coming back from the manufacturer of the old turf, though. Would you make the motion? Okay, thank you.
I move that we approve C2.
Moved by Julie, seconded by Cheryl. One more time, Julie. Abstain is considered a no vote, so passes 6-1. I learned that. Did you want? Okay, well, it ends up being a no anyway. Patrick, could you make the record show that it was not an abstention, it was a no vote from Kathy Bond?
Yes, that will be reflected in the minutes for this evening.
Thank you, Patrick. That is the consent agenda then. Patrick, next item, please.
Next item, under policy, second review, proposed consolidation of Board of Education policies.
I'll recognize either Cheryl or Julie on this item.
Thank you. We had, at the first read, we did have some discussion on these policies. You have on your table a new stapled together set of policies, because policy 200 that was mailed to you was not the correct one. The new one is in this, and the change is based on our discussion. In 10E is moving this policy back to the way we used to do it for a long time before COVID. So it's basically the same policy. That statement is the same policy that's been in our policy for 25 years. And other than that, all the policies remained as we had discussed the first read in all three policies.
And if I remember correctly, this was the only item that was really in
That's exactly
question
right.
or in contention, if you want to call it, at our last
Everything
discussion.
else we had already reviewed. So I move that we accept these policies because this is our second read.
And I'll second.
Diane?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. So just for clarification, so everybody knows that that struck out the ability for board members to vote remotely.
That's correct.
So we must be present to be able to vote.
Yes, we can come online to listen to the meeting, we can participate in the discussions, but we cannot vote remotely.
Correct. Okay.
And again, like Cheryl said, it was like that. Our policy read
long
like
as I
that
can
for
remember.
years. We just modified it when we came to COVID because we weren't having physical meetings. But now that that doesn't happen anymore, we can go back to the way it was.
Until the next major crisis. I said that under my breath, didn't I? Oh, I was afraid.
Are we voting?
Yes, there is a motion on the floor, moved by Cheryl and seconded by Julie.
It says it receives, but it doesn't.
There you go.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, everyone, for your patience and work on those policies. Patrick, next item, please.
Next item, under finance, elementary and secondary school emergency relief fund update.
And again, I'll let Dr. Thompson introduce the topic.
And as my friends are coming, I am going to just say that this is our regular update around ESSER. We just think it's important to be transparent about the dollars, where the dollars are being spent on a regular basis so that we all are aware of this. Once this report is complete, or this portion will be clipped out from the board meeting and placed on our website for those who would like to review this presentation again. Because again, we want everybody to be aware. We'd encourage you to go to our website and look for our ESSER pages and be able to review everything that has occurred thus far with our ESSER dollars. And we have a wonderful team here to present and give us an update.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. Hi, President Reeser, Superintendent Thompson. My name is Addie Lowell. I'm the district's Director of Budgeting. The last time I was here, we were getting the budget finally approved. Patrick is now handing that book out to you, so that is the finished product of all that work that we did together a month or so ago. I'm thrilled to be back today with my colleague, who I'll let introduce herself.
Good to see you guys. Good evening. Dee Dee Stroot with the Office of Innovation and Implementation.
So we're thrilled to be here this evening to give you an update on our comprehensive COVID relief fund plan. A tremendous amount of work has been done since the previous Board of Education update, so looking forward to getting into the weeds of all of this good information that we have for you today. So just kind of to recap us, there's a lot of acronyms that come with all of these federal relief packages. So just to make sure that we're all on the same page with which one we're talking about, I just want to go through them real quickly. We refer to CARES as the very first relief package. That was the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. Some folks call it ESSER 1. We kind of just refer to it as CARES at the district. That was the very first package signed into law back in March 27th of 2020. 2.5 years ago, feels like yesterday. This feels like yesterday, so we won't reminisce for too long, but the CARES Act also established the Elementary and Secondary Emergency Relief Fund, which is where the term ESSER comes from. So CRSA was the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act. This is what we refer to as ESSER 2, signed into law of December of 2020. An American Rescue Plan was followed quickly behind that in March 2021, and that is sometimes referred to as ARP. We call that ESSER 3. So jumping into all of the good times we've shared in the past, back to the start of the pandemic, March of 2020, that was the very first legislation that gave us that the immediate funds that we needed to prepare and respond to the coronavirus. The board acted very quickly back in 2020 to make an immediate purchase to prepare the district for the contingents that we would be remote in the fall, and they made a historic investment in technology, $24 million, which really supported us as we headed into the unknown of the 2021 school year. That school year, the CRSA Act established ESSER 2 funds, and then immediately right behind that, ARP came in with some extra funds as well. This meant 2021, our district had a lot of work to do in terms of planning for all of these COVID relief packages. And so spring of 2021, we created the Office of Innovation and Implementation to support getting these packages out into the district, our communities, our schools, and we began doing some priority planning. And thanks to our friends in Strategic Communications, who also supported that work, we were able to reach just students, staff, families, community to get input on how we should be spending these funds. And then that brings us to our very last update, which was November of last year. And so I will take us to the work that's taken place since our last update. So winter, spring, 21-22, there were various stakeholder engagement sessions that were completed just to make sure that we were capturing all of the feedback from every group population that we needed to make sure that we were spending these funds on our high needs populations, our vulnerable students, and making sure that it met the standards for our communities as well. So in May of this year, we had an exciting milestone. We submitted kind of our last version of our ESSER 2 application to KSDE. I am happy tonight to tell you that just a couple of short weeks ago, it was officially and finally approved. All of the initiatives that we submitted on our ESSER 2 application were reviewed by the Commissioner's Task Force and the State Board of Education, and all items were deemed as eligible, and we are good to proceed with those plans as necessary. We followed very quickly right up with that approval of the ESSER 2 application by turning around and saying, thank you for approving that. Now you can review our ESSER 3 application, and got that in just a couple of weeks after that. And last week, we also approached another milestone. It was the end date for the CARES funds. They had to be fully encumbered and spent down by 9/30 of 22. All right, so that brings us to today. We're here to give you an update on our comprehensive spending plan. The next item I have on this timeline for things that will take place in the future is an October 22 date, which we are very hopeful that the ESSER 3 application that we just turned in will be in front of the Commissioner's Task Force this coming Friday, just in time to make it to the State Board meeting for approval yet this month. So we are very hopeful. I think we learned today also that all the items through KSDE's secondary review process were deemed as eligible. So no comments back to us in terms of items not meeting allowable uses. So very hopeful that will be approved this month. So in fall and spring of this upcoming year, we have plans to get the ESSER Advisory Committee meetings back up just to reengage all of our stakeholders in our spending plans and our process and all of the things that have come to fruition as we are implementing these funds into the district. And then the last two timelines that I have on our future to-dos are really those end dates. So ESSER 2 funds have to be spent by September 30th of 2023, next year. Yes? Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, sure. And then all of our ESSER 3 funds have to be spent by the following September of 2024. So starting to really close that out in 2024. So.
My question is
Yeah.
just the first ESSER monies was 24,088. How much was 2 and 3?
So
I have
we're
to
definitely
repeat
gonna.
that. How much?
Cheryl, I
money-
apologize, we're not getting your.
Yeah, I just turned it on.
Okay, go ahead, start the question over.
ESSER 1 funds were 24 million. How much are ESSER 2 and 3 funds that
So
we've applied for?
Wichita's allocation for CARES ESSER 1 was about 17.9 in total. A portion of that went to non-public schools that were responsible for administrating funds for. ESSER 2 funds were 75.5 million, and ESSER 3 funds are 169.7 million. So, and we'll get to all those details here shortly as well.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
You betcha. So I don't have any significant updates on CARES or ESSER 1 funds. You may recall from our last update that these funds were fully expended the last time that we came to you with this information. So just to recap, those funds were used 100% in response to COVID. There was no requirement to go through a formal application process or collect stakeholder input just because of the pure emergency nature of the funds. And we focused a majority of those funds on purchasing hardware and connectivity for our students to be able to engage in remote learning in the 2021 school year. And like I said, they were fully expended the last time we met, and they still are today. We met all of our deadlines, and we're good to go on CARES ESSER 1. So now, moving on to SRSA ESSER 2 funds, our total allocation was $75.5 million. The end date on those is September 30th of 2023. KSD has updated its allowable uses. They are now up to 17 allowable use categories. We're all learning together through this process, and so they are adapting with us. And so they just kind of separated a couple that really needed to be broken out and then added a category for indirect. So now we're from 15 to 17, which is a change from the last time we came to you. The change between ESSER 1 and ESSER 2 is now there's a much more extensive application process that requires a tremendous amount of work, input from various folks within this room, a tremendous amount of collaboration between our teams to get the application lines ready to go to KSDE, Commissioners Task Force, and the State Board for approval. So far, as of the end of fiscal year 22, we have spent 90.7% of these ESSER 2 funds, and we'll go over the details of those here shortly as well. Now for ESSER 3, our allocation the last time that we came to you was $169.5 million. The state was able to find some sneaky dollars to add to our allocation, so we upped it a bit, and it's $169.7 million now. The end date on these funds is 9/30 of 24. We have the same 17 allowable uses, the same or similar application process. But now with ESSER 3, every package, there's just some additional levels of review and scrutiny and just making sure that we're being guardians of these funds in the right ways. So now with ESSER 3 funds, we have to engage stakeholders and demonstrate all of the different community groups that we are collecting feedback from on our plans to spend these funds. We have to post our safe return plans on our district website, and that was done the last time that we came to you as well. And there is also a requirement that we do a set aside of 20% of the total value of this award to spend directly on unfinished learning that occurred because of the pandemic. So just another layer of controls in place on this particular fund, and we'll go again over the specifics of the plan of these here shortly. So just to kind of give you a visual of all the work that's taken place over the last 11 months or so, the left two columns are really where we were a year ago when we brought this update to you. We had about 77% of ESSER 2 either was approved or applied for with the state, and then we still had the remaining 23% plus all of ESSER 3 left to really plan and line out and get on the applications and complete all of those steps involved with collecting stakeholder feedback and all of that good stuff. Well, today I am so pleased that really our portions of all of that work are done to date. ESSER 2 is fully approved and ESSER 3 is being reviewed, all items deemed as eligible. So we're kind of just waiting now on the remaining powers that be to move our applications through. So this is, again, just to show you the amount of work that's taken on your behalf over the last 11 months. So now you may be wondering, what are our approval odds for this application, this $169.7 million sitting in the state's hands? Well, good news. We feel very confident that our application line items will be approved with no issues. About 89% of our application was either previously approved on an ESSER 2 application, or the items have gone through KSD's construction and capital expenditure prior approval process. So a large majority of our initiatives on this application have already had some layer of review. So we feel very confident that the state will support all of the items that we pose to them on this application. So now we'll jump into the weeds of our comprehensive spending plan. So this is our ESSER 2 plan, and I've kind of tried to list these out by the allowable use categories, and I will tell you that our applications are hundreds and hundreds of lines long. So these are summarized in 10 bullet points, and I can't unfortunately go over every single one of the awesome initiatives. Thank you to Holly and Amanda, who highlighted a really wonderful initiative that we are using ESSER funds for. But yeah, that's one of 600 lines on the ESSER 3 application, so we're just going to try to do high-level overview this evening. So our ESSER 2 funds, we really focused on those immediate priorities that were given to us through our surveys, through community and stakeholder engagement processes. They said individual school needs and giving principals the ability to determine what was needed in their own individual schools was one of the #1 priorities. So 20% of our total ESSER 2 allocation was set aside for directly to give funds to principals to make those decisions, and then also to provide some school curricular resources. We again put 18% or $13.8 million towards educational technology. In returning to school, found that there was some shortfalls in just the amount of technology we had ordered in that initial $24 million investment. So some additional HPs and iPads went through ESSER 2 last year as well. Operation of schools, this was 5% or $3.9 million. This really supported all of the things we had to put in place just to support staff with the additional workloads that they had to endure during the 21-22 school year. Some examples of that were teachers who were teaching students both synchronously and asynchronously because of quarantine requirements, paras covering classrooms while other teachers are subbing for other classrooms that had teachers out on quarantines, and then substitute premiums to make sure that we could staff all of our classrooms as well. Maintaining services, this was 54% or $40.7 million. This went to retention bonuses and maintaining pre-COVID staffing levels. We do have some indirect costs related to all of our federal grants. There are, anytime that we are incurring payrolls related to federal grants, someone has to pay the payroll, someone has to hire the people, and that does cost money. There are services required when we're procuring things with these funds. So 2% or $1.4 million goes to that business office support. And then ESSER 2 supported 1% or $0.3 million of other, just to provide some additional PPE and sanitizer, and also initiatives to support recruitment and recovery of students that fell out of urban district enrollment due to the pandemic. So that's kind of the total ESSER 2 plan. I'll pause.
And I'm going to kind of chime in here as she continues to the next couple of slides. What I want to make sure that the community hears is that how we came up with these plans was input. If you remember back earlier on, we probably surveyed people to death, but we wanted their input on how we were to spend these dollars. Of course, we couldn't come together in large groups together, but we sent out surveys, and we had thousands and thousands and thousands of responses from community members, from staff inside of our school district, as well as students that were able to give input. And that's how we generated all these things that we were spending out of each of the ESSER plans. And that's how each plan was generated. And as she stated, when you move on down to the ESSER 3, we even had to go out to community groups that did not engage or that were unrepresented according to the new laws that were out there. And we had to go and make special pleas to those particular individual groups to say, this ESSER 3 is really for you. What needs do you have, and how can we spend the dollars to support what you all believe should be done? So I just wanted to be clear so that the community and everyone knows that all of these things were not just done and just pulling things out of the air, that we did use feedback and gathered all that information to determine what we spent the dollars on.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. I do like to point out, to me, CARES really was about responding immediately to immediate needs related to the pandemic. ESSER 2 was about reopening and getting our schools back and functioning. And ESSER 3 really is related to doing that unfinished learning and really allowed us to get to some additional priorities that were given to us in the community feedback as well. So on that ESSER 3 plan, you'll see some of these same themes. So we still spent ESSER 3 funds on some of the same allowable use categories, 1% or $2 million on individual school needs. This includes professional development that's determined at the school level for individual plans of study, and things like sensory rooms at schools where it made sense as well. Educational technology, 4% or $6.7 million. We have, again, some of those same pay items that existed last year still exist this year as we're covering for shortages in our classrooms. So for operation of schools, we have 3% or $4.7 million. Maintaining services is 26% or $44.4 million. Same indirect costs and same kind of other plans in terms of setting aside funds for PPE and sanitizer and cleaners and stuff. So. But now with ESSER 3, we've added some allowable use categories, which help us to encapsulate all of those additional priorities that the community established for us, which included meeting the needs of our at-risk student populations. So 3% or $5.9 million are targeting directly to our most high needs populations of students. So we have various graduation support programs and expanded tutoring services, intervention services that go to support those very high risk categories of students. Mental health was a top 3 priority given to us to address with these ESSER funds. And so 6% or $10.1 million have been set aside for this particular initiative. The district has expanded its child study teams exponentially, I will say. School safety is a major concern that we're addressing with ESSER 3 funds. We have behavioral health school liaisons, which is a model that was adapted from the mental health intervention teams. KSDE, through another state grant, funds some, and we were able to add on to that last year with the use of ESSER 3 funds. And then we have various behavior supports in place to meet kind of the criteria for mental health. Learning loss specifically, 14% or $24.1 million. This really is attributed to adding some additional hours for many of our paraeducator positions in the district, which allows for some additional small group instruction and intervention time, as well as new teacher training. Letters is a great example of that training. And so perfect example of something that is going directly into learning loss in our district, thanks to these funds. So we are able to extend some other federal programs, which includes Title and IDEA. So 6% or $9.4 million goes to that. That includes children with high poverty and at-risk factors, some teacher development and training, Native American, we've got neglected and delinquent, English language learners, migrant students. So we're able to kind of build on to the structure that already exists in the district by adding some additional ESSER funds onto the things that we're already doing to make them more impactful.
And I'm going to do what Ms. Ernestine is going to want us to do. And while you're here in this particular area, I'm going to draw attention to the mental health matters. There's some couple documents you have here that highlight some of the work that the ESSER funds have contributed to. And it's the mental health and safety, mental health matters, and it talks about the mental health programs and the partnerships that we have. And then the latest thing that we've added to our arsenal of support for mental health is our Student Connect, which is supporting students' well-being. And it's an after-hours opportunity for our middle school and high school students to be able to call and speak with the district's licensed staff about issues or concerns that pop up. And I will repeat, this is not a counseling service, but it definitely is a place where kids can go and talk with folks, and if need be, they can be referred to other places along with supporting their families and parents with that as well. So I just wanted to make sure that these are on your desk, so I wanted to just highlight those as this is an appropriate place as she's sharing with you about some of the mental health services that have been provided. And these are just a few that are kind of new. Well, this one's not new, but this one's new, that we want to make sure that we highlight.
So supplemental learning programs, this includes before, after school, and summer school opportunities. So 12% of our ESSER 3 allocation, or $21 million, is budgeted for all of those types of things. And then finally, we have improving air quality. So 22%, or $38 million, was contributed towards facilities upgrades. So now you may be asking, what about that 20% set aside in learning loss? Did we meet that requirement? What does that look like? So for Wichita Public Schools, 20% on $169.7 million is a lot of money. It's $33.9 million. And in going through some of those initiatives, you may, the learning loss category, for example, I only have $24.1 million in that particular allowable use category. Well, the good thing about all these allowable use categories is that the supplemental learning programs is a learning loss initiative. Some of our mental health initiatives is also a learning loss. It contributes to supporting that unfinished learning that occurred. So just because it's not in that learning loss allowable use doesn't mean that it isn't adding on to that set aside for that 20%. So on the application that we submitted, we really went for it. 31% of our total ESSER allocation is directed specifically to unfinished learning that occurred due to the pandemic. So $52 million of that $169.7 million we are using directly on that initiative. So some of those items that we kind of just went through was some of that professional development for teachers, paras that are covering classrooms, graduation support programs, expanded tutoring services and interventions, behavior supports, all the additional hours for para educators, small group instructions, the very robust summer school programs that Dee Dee's going to go through with us here in just a moment, and then the various before and after school tutoring programs that have been implemented across our schools as well. Just to give you a visual of what this total ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 comprehensive plan looks like, I think visually you can see that in taking all of our feedback from our communities, our stakeholders, our programs, we have a very nice spread across all of the allowable use categories. Tried to be very mindful to make sure we were hitting every at-risk population, meeting the district's strategic plan goals, and making sure that we were really targeting that unfinished learning in this comprehensive plan. So next, I just wanted to cover kind of effort versus duration. School districts, I think, have been receiving a lot of criticism because funds are not being immediately spent as we're turning in annual reports and quarterly reports. And so if you think back to the ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 packages, the legislation for those was really approved right in the middle of fiscal year 21. And then we were able to kind of do some planning, pre-planning for fiscal year 22 in that spring by collecting a lot of the survey results and the priorities from the community. And so really, if you think about it, we weren't actually able to budget and implement these funds until fiscal year 22. We've had one full fiscal year of utilizing these funds. of about 3, 22, 23, 24. So we're 37% spent between these two emergency relief funds, and about 30% of our time is elapsed. So I'd say we are right on target with where we should be in terms of how far along spent we are, assuming that we have made some one-time purchases at the start of the use of these funds. But I think we're looking very good in terms of our sustainability plan as we go through the next 2 fiscal years with these emergency relief funds. So. And now I'm going to turn it over to Dee Dee, who's going to highlight some wonderful things that we're doing with these funds.
You all heard a little bit about letters this evening, and over the course of the past few months, you've heard about some of the other ESSER-funded initiatives. So I just wanted to piggyback off of what Addie had shared about our ESSER 3 spending plan and just highlight one of the ESSER-funded initiatives of adding some additional peer consultants, or what we refer to as new teacher induction specialists, as well as give you an update on some additional information and data from our summer school 2022. So you can see a picture up there of our wonderful peer consultants, and they support our brand new teachers, first year college to classroom, and some of our second year teachers. And through our ESSER funding, we were able to add 4 additional peer consultants, or again, what we refer to, because they are technically only here through the ESSER funding, what we refer to as a new teacher induction specialists. And so by adding those 4 additional staff supports, we were able to support 64 additional brand new college to classroom teachers last year. And of those 64, we were able to retain 52 of those. So had we not had those additional staff supports, we may not have been able to serve those brand new classroom teachers, and therefore we may have lost even more than the few that we did. And below, I did include the data from the permanent peer consultants. They served 137 teachers and retained 114. So you can see the new teacher induction specialists are right in line with that. Those 64 teachers that we served were across 30 different schools. And knowing how important it is to have that additional support within our district, this year they did make 2 of those 4 NTI specialist positions permanent. So we have 2 ESSER-funded NTI specialists going into this school year. On to summer school 2022. It just keeps going. The fun just keeps coming. In July, we did share a lot of information about how summer 2022 went. We shared with you our progress monitoring information. We shared with you enrollment numbers. But one of the pieces of information that we didn't have yet because we needed to wait for our fall FastBridge screeners was the what we call pre and post data. So to qualify for summer school in our district, we utilized winter FastBridge scores, and we targeted our some risk population and at-risk populations. And then we added a progress monitoring component. So the 4 weeks that they were at summer school, we kind of did a dipstick utilizing our proficiency scales and surveys and a variety of things just to see if they were on track with what we were covering within those 4 weeks in June. But we also wanted to look at, you were teaching in the here and now, but are we retaining any of what we're learning? So we decided to utilize spring FastBridge scores versus fall FastBridge scores as maybe like our pre and post data. We had heard that some of the other districts around the nation were utilizing that, so we decided to try that this year. Before I kind of get into that data, one of the important points that we felt like as a core summer planning team was to note that we were supposed to have 16 total days of summer school, but due to the water main break and that boil water advisory, we technically only had 14 days of summer school. And in looking at the attendance of our summer school students, they attended on average of 9 to 10 days. So that is important because when we talk here in a minute about the data from the spring to fall FastBridge, the data for quite a few of the students is based off of 9 to 10 summer school days. So Our data is not 100% perfect, and I'll talk about that here in just a moment, but we feel confident after reviewing the spring to fall FastBridge scores, we feel confident in saying that summer school did have a positive effect. We also feel in areas that it slowed learning loss, and we also feel that it has the capability of improving scores for those who are attending. So I do want to draw your attention to a handout of our summer school FastBridge growth results by grade level. And I won't go through all these points. I'll let you peruse those on your own time. However, at the top, we did give a little bit of a key. So SS, I apologize for all the abbreviations on here. They're spelled out on the front and the back. But SS equals those students who did attend summer school, where the NS equals those students did not attend summer school. So let me share a couple data points that we based those statements in red on. If you go to first grade, and then you in the first column, and then you slide over to ER, which stands for early reading, that's the name of the test, and an early reading test of nonsense words. Right below that, you're going to see that there was the students who attended summer school, 9% of those students versus 8% of the students who did not actually had an increase. So again, if you go back up to that key, what that means is they, on their spring FastBridge, did not meet benchmark. But then going into the fall, 9% of our students who attended summer school did actually meet benchmark in the fall. So again, we do feel that for several of the students who attended summer school, where you see those increases, had they not attended summer school, they may not have made an increase. They actually may have decreased. We do have some areas where there was no growth, and I want to take you back to July, where we talked about, yes, we do want to close achievement gaps. Yes, we want to see increased achievement, but the research behind summer school is actually preventing that summer slide. So when students take 3 months off, sometimes they backslide, and we got to start all over again. So that is where the research shows, but we're hoping by creating a quality, robust summer school that we're able to not only mitigate those effects, but also increase achievement. On that same one, first grade, right below where we talked about increase, I also wanted to note the decline. Yes, we had summer school students who did decline where maybe they were meeting spring benchmark, and then in the fall they did not. However, what I want to call your attention to is that 8% of the students declined who attended summer school, where when we look at the rest of the population, there was a 14% decline for students who did not attend summer school. So, or 14, sorry, let me rephrase that. 14% of the students who did not attend summer school in that particular grade level had a decline. So these are very broad statements because, again, I mentioned earlier that this data is imperfect. It is imperfect for a couple reasons. One, we were only able, after reviewing everything, we were only able to look at the data points where the student took the same screener in the spring and in the fall. So that was one area that, we would have liked a more robust picture of how our students were doing in literacy skills and math skills. But we recognize that we can only compare apples to apples. We can't, make other statements. The other thing to note is that, some of these populations are smaller. But we feel pretty confident in what we're seeing across the board with the areas of increase and then the areas of decline to make these broad statements. Summer 2023 planning, although it's crazy, I know Gil hears this all the time. I'm like, I can't believe, we're already talking about summer 2023. We actually started planning for summer 2023 like 2 months ago. we debriefed in July, and then we were right at it in August, and I was like, okay, yes, we are going to begin the conversation about summer 2023, because we want to continue to recruit, make sure that the students who need to be at summer school are there, and really beef up and make a quality program. But this is one of the areas, to be transparent, that we will consider, are these the appropriate pre and post data points to look at, because we really want a comprehensive picture of how our students are doing. Dr. Thompson gave a plug earlier, but I just wanted to bring you back to our particular website on Wichita Public Schools. You can see all of our information. Again, we're committed to transparency and spending of our funds, but I also want to highlight that we have been capturing all the great things that ESSER has been funding along the way and will continue to capture. So you can see those news stories, pictures, the different things we have going on by going to this website. And you can see even more pictures about summer school as well.
I'm going to add one more plug-in that you all did not add that I think is important for our students in the academic area is the tutoring programs that we have for students. In our secondary, which is our middle school and high school, we are using Revolution Now, which there's a company called Revolution Prep, but the program is called Revolution Now. That is available for students, which is kind of pretty cool, where kids are able to call in and set an appointment with a tutor, and the tutor will help them with their homework, and it's available for any subject area. So that's a resource, if families are listening, that is available to you for free, that you can use with a live person, one-on-one tutor, to help your student if you're not able to, like me, with math or science or something that we don't really know, because I'm a kindergarten teacher. We need help, right? So those places are available. And the second option for our elementary students who need support for homework would be our homework hotline. And that is another opportunity for families to be able to sign on, call in. They can use their computers. They can do Teams with them. And those folks there have all of the curriculum from pre-K through 5, and they are able to pull those resources and support students with their homework. So I just wanted to make sure that families are aware that these things exist, and every time we have an opportunity to share that, we should. It's all over social media, on our websites, anywhere you want to look. We have these, how do you get there to it? If you really don't know, contact your school, and your school folks should be able to refer you and get you to the right spaces to support your students with homework and other and tutoring services.
We have a one-pager for you this evening that will kind of summarize all of the different categories of spending in our comprehensive plan, and that will also be available on this website here shortly as well. So just to cap us off for the evening, 100% of our ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funds, which is $245 million in total, have been targeted towards initiatives applied for and or approved. CARES Act funds have expired and are 100% expended, and USD 259's portion of that was $17 million. 37% of ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funds, $91 million in total, have been spent through the end of fiscal year 22, so 6/30 of this year. And just as a good note, our comprehensive plan is not static. Anytime we make a budget, there's room for flexibility. There will be some budget fallout, and we'll make adjustments based on upcoming community feedback and engagement, and as we're evaluating the effectiveness of initiatives. So there's room for flexibility always in our plans.
And while 100% of our ESSER funds are planned for spending, work continues to evaluate effectiveness and sustainability. Again, we'll continue to engage stakeholders and modify plans accordingly and to plan for that fallout. And again, planning for summer 2023 has commenced, and we'll continue to evaluate the best ways to overcome unfinished learning and strengthen student connection to school communities, because that's another important piece of the summer work. We would be happy to take any questions or thoughts at this time.
Julie?
Thank you for this report. I hate to be a bad news thing when we've heard all this great stuff, but the only thing that I'm thinking of is in 2 years when all this huge pot of money is gone, then we're not going to have the money to keep all those programs going and all that extra support that's been provided.
That is true. Some things will have to. That's the importance of this division here, is to evaluate the programs that are working and the ones that are not just because they are even ESSER, but all of our programming. If there are things in ESSER that are working and things that we didn't pay with ESSER that are not working, we should stop those and add the ones that are working, right? So that's the importance of this balancing thing about what's working, what is not working, and what are we not going to do. And if you pay close attention to us, I know a lot of people got fussy with us about a lot of things we said no to because we knew if you hire hundreds and hundreds of people, when the ESSER dollars are gone, we have to dismiss those folks. And then it's just like sucking the gut out. So what we're trying to do is look at things that enhances the things that we were already doing, or add things that we thought we should be doing to see if they're going to work well for us so that we can continue to use those things as we move forward. So it's been very strategic about how we've spent the dollars, and I know people sometimes thought we were off the rails and why you didn't give us this or give us that, but there was chaos for everybody, but it was definitely organized and strategic, I will say it that way. Because we didn't want to pull the rug up underneath people, give them everything, and then pull it out from underneath them. So we tried to be as careful as we could with how we spent it. So you're right. When it gets closer to this time, when this is over, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about what's working, what's not, what we're going to keep, what we're not going to keep, and then be able to get ourselves back balanced with our budget.
Sustainability plans have been a part of the conversation since the beginning of the innovation and implementation department, since the beginning of any of the start of any of the projects. That has been at the forefront, and that is actually one of the questions that we ask. What is your sustainability plan? Now, part of my role that I love is that I also work very closely with grants and other federal funds to begin those conversations, to ask those questions about, okay, we're getting some great data out of this. It's been a wonderful support for our district. If we continue this, how are we going to fund it? So that question is constantly being brought up with a variety of different departments and resources, so we can begin to have those conversations about sustainability.
Great.
Cheryl?
Thank you for this report. There has been things in the newspaper about how you've got school districts have ESSER funds and they're not spending them, or they're not spending them correctly. I have every confidence that we are spending our funds to get the biggest support for our students as we possibly can. I am very pleased, particularly with the discussion of sustainability, seeing the data with the FastBridge data from summer school, because what this tells me is we're moving in the right direction. And it will be interesting to look at the data from next year's summer school, because we will have been in it for 1 year, one more year. And we're seeing the data that we saw earlier tonight, where our little people are growing exponentially. And this is actually all the way through our middle schools, so it makes a world of difference when we carry it on up the line. So I am a believer we drive with data, so please continue to do the data pieces and bring those to us so that we can see them. Thank you very much for this report.
I also want to just emphasize, I'm pleased to hear that we're planning on another robust summer school program. I think we all visited summer school programs this previous summer. I was very impressed. But I mean, the theme that really came across and during that summer school was that it was a true learning environment going on. And even before these numbers you showed, I could told you that we were improving on things. And I just want to plant a seed tonight that even if it means making some adjustments and priorities in our budget, even after ESSER's over, I think we're going to have to plan on having a robust summer program from here on, because that's where we can really catch up on some things in a more relaxed environment. And I think a lot of our parents would like to see a more robust summer program. So I'm glad to hear you mention summer programs tonight and show us. And I realize it's kind of raw data, but I think summer school works. I think our after-school programs work. And if we truly want to make progress and then make gains and achievement, we are going to have to make the budgetary commitment to these type of programs in the future, even after ESSER is over. So that's the seed I wanted to plant tonight.
Well, I set you up for that, did I?
Any other questions or comments? Diane?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, and I'll second the robust summer school program initiative. I really appreciate that you guys tying the data to the fast bridge from the spring to the summer and then to the fall. That was something when Dr. Thompson and I talked about summer school last year, that was something that I just asked, and she was like, oh yeah, we're already working on it. And I was like, thank you. And so I appreciate that you guys are using that information, and then also that you're trying to also refine that information to make it cleaner in the future. So thank you for those discussions. Thank you for the summer school emphasis, and that it's actually working and moving the needle in the right direction where we need to see academic gains. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Patrick, next item, please.
Next item, under miscellaneous, superintendent's report.
Dr. Thompson?
I'll pass.
Patrick, next item, please.
Next item under miscellaneous, Board of Education reports and requests.
I'll take the first crack at this tonight, if you don't mind. We live in a great country with a lot of freedoms. We live in a great state. We live in a great city. And one of the foundations of that great country is public education. We take public education, the 7 of us take public education very seriously. We know the public demands a properly functioning public education system. The one reason why we got through the COVID crisis was because we had some generational trust that our staff members and previous Board of Educations had built up in our community with the Wichita Public School. Unfortunately, it only takes a few people acting up in school with bad behavior to tear down some of that trust. And I want to reassure the public tonight that the Wichita Board of Education, our staff, is committed to the safety. We put it in our strategic plan. It will stay there. It was there yesterday, it will be there tomorrow, and we will continue to work on it every single day. My interest tonight is to, the minute we started having some severe incidences in our school recently, it was clear that it was done by a very few small number. Well over 99% of our students and our families are working hard every single day to assure their children get the proper education. Our staff joins in that commitment. This Board of Education joins in that commitment. I am encouraged that our staff, our top administrative staff, and our staff on the ground floor, on the ground level, reacted to these incidences as soon as possible. And I tonight want to make sure that this Board of Education shows our staff and shows our administration that we will back them up on whatever it takes to stop any bad behavior that disrupts a proper learning environment. So tonight my request is going to be I'd like to request that Superintendent Thompson, and the whole, she's already mentioned that she's going to do this, but the whole purpose of me doing this is I want us on record as showing that we are fully behind this effort in order to turn this corner. But I would, on a very small amount of behaviors, but it's a very small amount of behaviors that can disrupt a whole system. So I'd like to request that Superintendent Thompson engage appropriate staff to review and evaluate all Board of Education policies that pertain to student behavior, including preventive, support, and consequences, in order to determine whether revisions should be made to provide the safest possible learning environments for student and protection of our staff, with the ultimate goal of tightening up these policies where if there are major disturbances, they will be dealt with quickly and with tough love, but at the same time, we will make sure that the students and families of this community that depend on us for a healthy learning environment can count on us day in and day out. So that's my request. Diane, do you have any request or, if you want to?
Nope,
Yeah.
I was just going to say, so noted.
No,
Diane?
I don't.
Ernestine? Good.
Request a report?
Yes, this is time for board requests or
Well, I
reports.
just want to say two things that I've been to that I just want to just shout out. East High had an event that they called the Big Do. And it was all of the clubs and organizations and sports groups that wanted to raise money, and they had figured out all of the things that they could do, so that there was the garden club, and I did buy a chrysanthemum from them, and I bought a daisy from this one, and I got, you probably on Facebook maybe saw the girl that with a bare foot kicked that soccer ball, and you paid $1 and she kicked the soccer ball and against the backsides of the soccer team, the boys soccer team. And and so rather than kick myself, I paid to have her, Genevieve, do my kicking. But that was such a wonderful thing. The whole front yard of East High was just filled with thousands, and they had everything from a climbing wall that the ROTC sponsored, and it was just an exciting thing. And I just really not only was impressed with the administration and the teachers that all were out there and supporting it, but with all those kids who had put together their little tables and their little stalls. The other thing that I've been to recently that I want to share is the Watermark books and the Kansas African American Museum and another organization that I forgot the name of, sponsored a New York author to come to Wichita to Meade Middle School. Kwame Alexander was absolutely, he had those kids in his hand. And I've taught middle school, and I mean, that's not easy. But he just had them in his hand. And his theme was about don't give up. And he had them with how you don't say no to yourself, and then he would say, and the whole auditorium would shout, yes to yourself. Say yes to yourself. And he told about that first book of his that he wrote, and he took it to a publisher, and they said, it's not interesting. They turned it down. He rewrote it. He took it to a second. And he just kept on doing that. Ultimately, he mentioned that he took it to 19 different publishers. And they all said no. And he was getting ready to self-publish, and a publisher called him up and said that they were going to publish it. The name of the book is Crossover, and that book won the Newbery Prize Award. And he says to these kids, and he just really had them in their hand, he said, Just think, if I'd have given up after that first time, or if I'd have given up after the 4th time, what if I'd have given up after the 10th time? And then he began to say, if I'd have given up after the, and then they would say it with him, 11, 12. He just had them with him. And he really did get them with the idea of perseverance. So not only was he a good presenter, just entertaining, but his message about perseverance and hanging in there. And every student at Meade Middle School got a copy of his brand new book called The Door of No Return, Kwame Alexander. The adults didn't get free books, so I went to Watermark and bought my own. I do have a request, and I didn't write it down yet, but I will. I don't have a pen, so I'll write it. My request is that I would like to have a presentation about what our district is doing for ESOL students. This city is absorbing and taking in and loving refugees. We've got them from Ukraine, from Afghanistan, from all over the world, and we've got more of them coming. Right now, the president just said that some more from Ukraine were going to be coming in. I know that here in Wichita, we've got a really tremendously loving community that is supporting that. And I would like to know what facilities we in the schools have for helping English as a second language students. And that presentation doesn't have to be next time or the time after that. I just would like at some point for that information, because I don't know what the facilities are that are available and activities for them. Let you write it down? I'll write it, okay.
Thank you, Ernestine.
I have one more ask. Just a minute. No, this is just a suggestion, and it's not really a request, it's a suggestion. I just think these presentations and these are so great. I would request that whoever the presenters are, that their names be right up here. The date of the presentation is, and I'd like to have the presenters, because then when I'm trying to look at it again next time and a couple of weeks from now, and what was the name of that person that did? I mean, I know Susan, and I know several others by name, but I wondered if that could be put on there when they put together their. That's just.
Yes, ma'am, we'll make that happen.
Thank you. That helps this old lady with memory. Okay.
Thank you, Ernestine.
Now I'm finished.
Thank you, Ernestine. Julie?
Mine will just be real quick. I was happy that our district tooted our own horn at and I'm just going to call it the High School Choices Fair. I know that wasn't the official title of it, but it was fabulous. And we have so many great choices and so many great programs for high school kids to pick. It's overwhelming.
Thank you, Julie. Kathy?
Mine's quick also. I had an opportunity to visit our Wichita Learning Center at Town East, and Lee Miller runs a tight ship there, and Mrs. Alvarez. I got to meet her, and it was a joy to be there. There's just one concern I have, and that's their security. They have just glass doors, and you walk into the mall, and you turn left, and there they are. There's no security measures to get into the mall, and you turn left, and there's these glass doors, and there's a makeshift lock that someone made from their garage to try to keep it locked at night because the floor lock doesn't work all the way. So I'm concerned with their security issues, and I don't know if anything is happening with that or not. If you could answer that, maybe?
I sure can.
Okay.
We actually have visited that site. This week was on our agenda to visit, and I had the principal with me along with Lauren Pack. And we did just part of our normal visits to ask them what are some of the things that are going well, some of the things that they needed support with. and they shared that they would like to have us come out, and I know that Terry is she's been out once, but we'll do it again, to go out and look at those measures. We also have to take into consideration that building, we are leasing it. So we can't just make all these changes to a facility without working with the mall. And so we're going to make some time to go out and visit with the mall and the leadership there to see what all we can do there. So yes, I am aware of that, and we are right on top of it.
Super. I also had opportunity to go out to Benton Elementary and participate in See You at the Pole. They had a lovely turnout with those K through 5s, and that was encouraging. I also attended Northwest High School's homecoming game and their parade, and what was really fun was to see Wilbur, Peterson, Kensler, all in the parade, all those grade schools around there, and I even ran into, Gil and I are becoming pretty good friends now, aren't we? Because, well, we don't have a history, but our kids have a history with him. And then tomorrow, I am going to be touring Prime Fit with Mr. Wilson, so I'm very excited about that. And I might do some spontaneous high school visits, too.
Thank you, Kathy. And I think we can put the Town East entrance and Ernestine's name, title, dates on presentation as as casual information to the superintendent without an official request, if that's okay. Yeah. Cheryl?
I too was able to go to the career and tech ed piece, and as several of us did, several of us were there. And what impressed me was that we talk about our magnet schools and our magnet school choices, and they're wonderful. But this is truly choice for our parents and for our kids. And it was really, for the very first time that they had it, I think it was very well supported by the community. There seemed to be people coming and going. They seemed to be happy with what they were getting. And so I appreciate all the effort that it took to put that on, because that doesn't come easy. But I think it was well worth the time and the effort that they did. I've been out in several buildings, and I will continue to go to buildings. So we're having a great year so far.
Thank you, Cheryl. Hazel?
I have no requests, but I'd like to share that I went to the county commissioners meeting where they presented a proclamation for Hispanic Month, and I was very excited to see USD 259 well represented there. I also went to La Familia Senior Citizen. They were celebrating Hispanic Month and was able to watch the beautiful dancers from Horse Man. They were just wonderful, beautiful. They stole the show. I attended the Heights North football game. That was a great experience. I went to Arts and Education. I got to meet Julie's daughter, who is the curator at the Wichita Art Museum, and it was the Arts and Education Week for Wichita, or for public schools. I think that's what it's called. Then I also went to the Pathways to Success, and I would like to also share that on October 10th is Indigenous Day. That's all.
Thank you, Hazel. We take great pride in the fact that we only spend 1% of our budget on central administration. Tonight's presentations made it very clear that there is a lot on our plate. And so I would like to, at this time, ask if there's any previous requests, because I'm sensitive to administration's time under policy 275, if there's any requests that can be removed so that we can keep staff moving forward on the big issues that we identified tonight. Is there any other requests tonight that could be removed? Kathy, did you still want that? I understand you probably got an answer on the 21 days of equity challenge.
Yeah, we took care of that last meeting.
I still have it on my official list. So is it okay to take that one off?
Please, yeah.
Okay. We'll take that one off. let me ask you about the dress codes for principals of each building. Is that properly identified, and do you still need some type of report from administration on that? Okay. Are dress codes by principals, I'm assuming this should read, are dress codes decided by principals of each building? Right. Okay,
The principals don't get to decide on the dress code. The principals do not get to decide what the dress code is. Let me go back. I should specify the question. Are you talking about dress code as it relates to whether they wear uniforms?
No.
Okay.
No.
What?
Appropriate attire for, okay, what is appropriate attire?
Yeah.
Students and staff, both.
Okay.
I think that there needs to be a boundary with appropriate attire in our schools.
For?
Our students and our teachers.
Okay. So our dress code for our teachers are decided by the contract, the negotiated agreement that we have with them. So if there's adjustments that need to be made on the dress code for staff, we have to negotiate that.
Okay.
As far as dress code for students are concerned, that's something that the staff, principal, and students in that building discuss, and then they create their dress code. So it's not something in isolation that a principal just decides we're going to do this, we're going to do that. They use their I guess whatever committee that they put together, that's what typically it is, to be able to decide, and then they put that into like their newsletters newsletters or their handbooks and things like that. And that's pretty much how that's decided.
So it is per building?
Per building.
Per building. Okay, thank you.
would that satisfy that request? Or did you want anything else done on it?
I'll go observe and then I'll come back.
Okay, so we will leave it on and give you a chance to observe and then come back? That sounds fair. Your request on Disney or Disney Plus videos, do you still want the board to have a formal vote on any of those policies?
Yeah, I thought we talked about that, and you were going to put it into policy, and we were going to vote on it.
Do we have Kathy's requested changes on that policy?
I gave it to Dan. Yeah.
Okay, I will get that on the November agenda then. Okay. And then on your request for access to what our educators have on access to our website that would require a sign-in capabilities, my concern on that one is the fact that we are charged as a board members and it's specifically in state law that we are not employees of USD 259. I'm a little concerned about opening a door in that area, but if you could convince me on why we would need access to those website, I'm more than willing to listen.
Right now?
Yes, if it's okay.
Okay.
Or if you would like, go ahead. Oh, or if you would like, I will put that on the agenda in November as well.
Yes, let's do that.
Okay.
Okay.
That way we can have, and I apologize, it's really all hands on deck, and that's why I emphasize, I think there's a tendency sometimes to think that with these requests, and we put 2 more on tonight, that we just have this unlimited staff to work on all these requests, and that's why there is a policy 275. So I just wanted to make sure that we clear the deck, allow administration to really concentrate on the issues that we have made very clear tonight on what needs to be done, and also that we allow them the time and flexibility to work on the strategic plan. That is the whole purpose of why I'm bringing this up. But go ahead, Ernestine.
I'm perfectly willing to just have a personal conversation with somebody about the ESOL program. If the rest of the board doesn't need to know the information or isn't interested.
I think it's actually, I think it's actually a very good idea to have that presentation. I think it's.
Yeah, not for any vote or anything, I just want to know.
Yeah, it's a presentation, right.
Okay, yeah, just a presentation.
Okay, sounds good. Patrick, next item, please.
Next item, new business.
Seeing none. Patrick, next item.
Next item is adjournment.
Ernestine moves to adjourn. Is there a second? Moved by Ernestine, seconded by Cheryl, to adjourn.
Oh, we got to vote. I forgot I had to vote. I couldn't just move it and run.
Motion carries 7-0. We are adjourned. See you next month.